the December 9th, 2019 meeting to order. And we are privileged to have the Boy Scout Troop Pack 135, Den 5, that will come forward and lead us in the pledge. Okay, gentlemen, if you would come forward and tell us your name and a little bit about yourself, and then afterwards, we would love to have a picture with you.
Hello, my name is Grant, and I go to Mountain Park Elementary. My name is Parker Suggs, and I go to Mountain Park Elementary.
My name is Adam Schlemmer, and I go to Mountain Park Elementary.
My name is Jacob Williams, and I go to Fulton Academy of Science and Technology.
Thank you. We've got another Boy Scout in the audience. Would you like to come forward and tell us who you are?
Hi, I'm Christopher Schlemmer, and I go to Roswell High School.
Terrific. Thank you so much. It looks like we are all very well represented with the Scouts this evening. So if we would love to have a picture with you, so if you'll come forward. The next item on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Tizer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is a wonderful story. We would like to wish Barbara Duffy well on the next chapter of her life. I'm not thoroughly convinced that she'll be able to give up on this one, but we certainly do want to recognize her years of service. This is a proclamation honoring Barbara S. Duffy. Whereas Barbara S. Duffy, a longtime Roswell resident, is retiring as Executive Director of North Fulton Community Charities. Whereas North Fulton Community Charities assists individuals and families with emergency need for basic essentials such as food, rent, and utilities and clothing in North Fulton. Whereas Barbara began working with NFCC when the organization was founded in 1983 as a volunteer and also served as chairman of the Community Clothes Closet for 10 years. Whereas Barbara became executive director in 1990, and with her leadership, the organization has grown to employ a staff of 46 and to enlist the assistance of thousands of volunteers each year. North Fulton Community Charities serves the communities of Alpharetta, Johns Creek, Milton, Mountain Park, and Roswell, and its thrift store, food bank, education center, and warming center are located on Elkins Road in Roswell. Whereas North Fulton has a growing population of economically marginalized families, and NFCC helps almost 10,000 individuals representing more than 4,000 families each year, and more than 100 local families receive food from NFCC each day. Whereas over 1,400 adults take life skills and workforce readiness classes yearly at the Education Center. Whereas more than 900 families benefit benefit from NFCC holiday programs for warm coats, Thanksgiving meals, and holiday toys. Whereas Barbara will retire from North Fulton Community Charities on December 31st, 2019, after 29 years, and we recognize Barbara's exceptional leadership and guidance of the organization, her dedication to our community, and her passion for serving those who are in need. Whereas Barbara's tireless energy sets an incredible example for all residents to give back to their community and to help fulfill the mission of NFCC. Together, we can help. Now, therefore, I, Lori Henry, Mayor of the City of Roswell, and City Council do hereby proclaim the day of December 9th, 2019 as Barbara S. Duffy Day in the City of Roswell, and ask all our citizens to recognize and celebrate in this event. Let's give Barbara Duffy a hand.
I am so honored to be here. Roswell has been the home of North Fulton Community Charities for 37 years. And we started on Grove Way in the Child Development Building and moved in 2005 up to Elkins Road. We're getting ready to expand again. We've bought another building on Elkins Road and will be significantly increasing our ability to provide education programming along with coordinated services for the families that come to us. You may be interested to know that it's about 65% of the families we serve who are Roswell residents. It has always been the majority of families, although we serve five cities in North Fulton. We are very appreciative of the support that we have had from council over the years. And you've come to volunteer, you are behind us and provide support for our holiday program and all of our programs. We are proud to be in Roswell, and we are proud that the Roswell community has come together to serve those who are the most vulnerable in our community. We have a lot more work to do, as you know, to make life a little bit better for those that are marginalized. We are desperately in need of affordable housing and some new transportation options and things that will make it possible for those who serve us and our needs in this high service community and make our lives wonderful. They go to school with our children. They are our friends. They are our neighbors. I have every respect for the families that we serve and the hundreds and hundreds of volunteers who come and make it possible. So thank you so much. I have a few folks from NFCC who have snuck in unbeknownst to me, and I would like to say thank you to them. But thank you, Council.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the charities that would like to come forward and say a few words?
I would like, if I may, to introduce the new executive director, Holly York. Please stand up. Holly is. Holly is very familiar with
Well, we would love
Roswell.
to have a picture with you.
Good. Thank you.
Hey, Julie.
11 grandchildren.
Thank you again to Barbara Duffy for everything you've done in our community. We truly are appreciative. The next item on the agenda is the Administration and Finance Department. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 2 of today's agenda, approval of the FY 2020 mid-year budget amendment. This was deferred from the November 25th, 2019 Mayor and Council meeting.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on where we've been and where we're at tonight. We did bring the mid-year budget amendment to you at committee on November 12th. That was brought forward to the Mayor and Council meeting on November 25th, and as Councilmember Zapata said, that item was deferred. The Mayor did send a memo out following that meeting requesting any feedback be provided to the finance staff by December 3rd. We did have a meeting with Councilmember Zapata, and we went over quite a few of the mid-year requested items. And as promised, finance staff provided an email to the Mayor and Council this past Friday on December 6th, summarizing a lot of the items that we discussed with Councilmember Zapata. We also provided, and it's in your packet, 3 exhibits, 2 of which were already provided in the prior meeting. Exhibit A provided a detailed narrative of all the requested items. Exhibit B provided a summary of that by fund. And then Exhibit C was the new item that we provided where we summarized all the requests by request type. So was it an administrative type request? Was it a new request, an unfunded request? Those types of items. I will say, and as I mentioned in my email on Friday, what you have in your packet for Exhibit C changed slightly because we found one minor mistake, but nothing substantive changed. And I do have copies if anyone needs one. But like I said, the change was the revenue that we anticipate receiving related to Rapstick was just classified in the wrong category. That was the only change that occurred. We are happy to go over the items again and present for you again if you'd like, but I wanted to leave it to the pleasure of the Mayor and Council if you'd like for us to, or if you'd like to jump into any discussion.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council members. So I'll just quickly go through each of the items that we had for mid-year. We'll start with the general fund operating requests, starting with the revenues. The first one that we have is the recognition of Alphareta's 50% share for the Rapstick expenses in the amount of $63,115. And then the second item we have is the recognition of the insurance premium tax revenue in the amount of $225,135. This has come in over what we had originally anticipated, so that's what you see here. The third item that you see is the correction in the indirect cost revenue. So the revenues were budgeted slightly higher than were expected, and this request is just to make that correction in the amount, and that is by reducing it by $36,447. So the total general fund revenue adjustments for mid-year are $251,803. Moving on to the operating expenditure adjustments, the first one that we have is a reduction of $178,642 for the contingency for building and code enforcement transition. So as you all know, in the FY 2020 approved budget, we had budgeted 1 month's worth of expenditures for the contracted building inspection and code enforcement services. However, the transition period was completed sooner than expected. ComDev staff did a great job, and we saved that money, so that's what you see there. The next request is to cover the training, supplies, and food for the members of the city's boards and commissions. If this is not approved at mid-year, the training will have to be postponed by a year due to scheduling. The next one is the code enforcement travel for $2,000. So during the FY 2020 budget process, when code enforcement was brought in-house, the travel costs associated with the requested training for staff were not included. So this is a request from the department to increase that budget by the $2,000. And then the final item that we have in the operating expenditure adjustments is the $17,300 for the downtown parking lot expenses. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So what we are doing here is we are basically consolidating these expenses. So there are some expenses that were within the solid waste fund. So we are bringing them, we would like to move them to the general fund and consolidate everything in one place to make it easier to manage. So that's the $17,300 being requested here. So the total general fund operating expenditure adjustments is a negative $147,342. Moving on to the general fund capital requests, the first one that we have is the electric vehicle charging station replacement in the amount of $40,000. So this request is to replace 4 charging stations that we have here in the city, 2 here at City Hall, 1 at the East Roswell Park, and 1 at the Roswell Area Park. So these stations were manufactured by GE, which is no longer in this business, and ChargePoint has been maintaining these stations all these years. But starting on December 31, these electric vehicle charging stations will no longer be maintained or supported by ChargePoint. Hence, the department is requesting the $40,000 for the replacement of these electric vehicle charging stations. The next item we have is the LED lighting retrofit program at City Hall in the amount of $120,000. Now, this was an item that was part of the FY 2020 budget process. It was requested by the administration department then, but Mayor and Council had suggested, it was unfunded, and Mayor and Council had suggested it be brought back at mid-year. Hence, the department is requesting it now at this time. The third item we have is from Rec and Parks. This is the $33,000 being requested for the Physical Activity Center dance floor replacement. This floor is 27 years old and is in really bad shape. The subfloors are really damaged, and they pose a safety hazard to the participants. So hence, the department is requesting the $33,000 to replace that. We also have another request from Rec and Parks in the amount of $100,000 for the playground replacement at Roswell Area Park. Typically, the department requests $200,000 for this during the budget process, and they had requested $200,000 during the past budget year as well. But only $100,000 was approved, and this is the other $100,000 which was unfunded, which the department is requesting at mid-year now. And this would go towards replacing the playground at the Roswell Area Park. The next item is for the Roswell Area Park pool infrastructure repairs in the amount of $60,000. So during this past summer, Rec and Parks, it was brought to their notice that there was a huge amount of water loss at the Roswell Area Park pool, and the repairs for that would cost $60,000, and that is what the department is requesting here. We also have a request from Rec and Parks in the amount of $15,000 for the Arts Center West septic field line replacement. Now, this line is more than 30 years old and is damaged due to the roots and all the dirt that has got in there, and it needs to be replaced, and that would cost $15,000. There is another request in the amount of $90,000 for the Big Creek Greenway Boardwalk repair. This was damaged during the 2009 flooding, and the total repair estimates are upward of $500,000. And the $90,000 being requested by the department is for the repair of the high priority areas of that particular boardwalk. Continuing with the general fund capital request, the next one we have is also from Rec and Parks, and this is in the amount of $105,000 for the landscape improvement plan at Oxbow Road, Roswell Area Park, City Hall, and Groveway. Now, these are projects that are all underway and are continuing, and the department needs additional funding to complete these projects. The next item is also from Rec and Parks. This is $68,000 being requested for the marketing plan for the River Parks Master Plan. And then we also have a request in the amount of $126,230 for the wrap stick repair. This amount being requested is over and above what is being refunded by our insurance company. And the amount that you saw in the revenue adjustments, the refund that we would get from from Alpharetta, the $63,115 is half of that amount. Then the next request is from the Transportation Department, and this is in the amount of $50,000 for the connected vehicle smart signals. Now, this initiative is being led by GDOT to create a network of smarter traffic signals throughout Metro Atlanta region. City of Roswell has the opportunity to upgrade 65 traffic signals as part of this initiative by paying only 20% of the cost. The remaining 80% will be paid by ARC, which is the Atlanta Regional Commission. The $50,000 being requested is to upgrade 25 of those 65 signals in 2020, and the remaining 40 in 2021 in phase 2. And if the city wants to be part of this initiative, GDOT is requesting funding and an MOU by March 2020. Hence, this funding is needed at mid-year. The next request is also from the Transportation Department in the amount of $26,500 for the asphalt planer equipment. This is an attachment to the existing Bobcat that is used by the department, and it is more than 15 years old and is in disrepair. Hence, the department needs to buy that attachment at a cost of $26,500. The final item that we have in the general fund capital request is in the amount of $50,000. Mayor and council had approved an IGA with the city of Alpharetta in 2017 as part of the Rucker Road project. The budget amendment approved in 2018 as part of this project had inadvertently excluded funds received from a previously approved development that was dedicated to this project, and this request is to appropriate those funds. So the total general fund capital expenditure adjustments is in the amount of $883,730. This slide here provides a summary of all of these general fund requests. So the total general fund revenue adjustments in the amount of $251,803. The general fund operating expenditure adjustments are negative $147,342. So that would leave us with a remaining funding of $399,145. In terms of the capital, so we have an available fund balance over policy of $5 million approximately. The total general fund capital expenditure adjustments are $883,730. That would leave us with a fund balance over reserve of a little over $4.1 million. We move on to the other funds, starting with the water fund. There is one request here from the department, and that is they are requesting additional funds for the replacement of the water service vehicle in the amount of $83,903. With that, the fund balance over reserve by policy in this particular fund would be left at $416,097. In the stormwater fund, we have one request for the recognition of revenue. This is from the trade-in of the equipment that was purchased earlier this year, and that was $46,600. And the department is requesting the purchase of the trench compactor equipment in the amount of $31,000 with the savings that were achieved through that trade-in of the stormwater excavator. So with that, the estimated remaining fund balance over reserve by policy in this fund would be around $315,600. In the Recreation Participation Fund, there is one request from the department, and that is for the Recreation Program Management Software, which would cost $30,000. This software would be to collect medical data, waivers, and consents from the parents of participants. Right now, it's all being done on paper, so this would save a lot of time and cost for the department. And then we have the Fleet Services Fund here. So after the 2020 budget was adopted, the city's audit firm had recommended a few changes to the way we account for leased vehicles, and this is just an accounting adjustment and has no impact on the budget. And the amount here is a little over $1 million that we are talking about. So the net impact is zero to the fund. In the Capital Projects Fund, we have a few requests here. For the revenue adjustments, what you see, the first item that you see is again the fleet fund. So it's going to be moved from the fleet fund to the capital projects fund. So that's the amount you see there, a little over $1 million. And then the second one is the shared stormwater agreement revenue in the amount of $54,000. Now this is for an item that was approved by mayor and council in an agreement with the Fulton County for the library at the Norcross Street. So that's what you see there. And the same thing down at the bottom for the expenditure adjustments, the similar thing. So the net impact in the capital projects fund is also going to be 0. And then moving on to the final one, the risk and liability fund. Again, during the FY 2020 approved budget, there was included an error in the amount of the risk fund revenues that were budgeted, and hence the department, we are just requesting a correction in that by reducing the revenues by $172,993. That is all we have for the mid-year requests. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, great presentation, clear. I would like to bring the attention, especially to 3 items here, which there will be item number 8, number 18, and partial number 15, partial, which is the City Hall portion. So I would like to know if we can have more detailed information on these items 8, 15, City Hall, and 18.
So, Jeff Leatherman, Recreation Parks, Historic and Cultural Affairs. Specifically on number 15 is an item that would be associated with my department. And Councilmember Zapata, were you specifically talking about the City Hall portion of that? So a couple of years ago, the City Hall master plan for landscaping was approved. We've been slowly working our way through multiple phases associated with that project. And this finishes off what I believe, and I'll look it up real quick, is phase 5 of that plan, which is about $30,000 associated with additional landscaping improvements. It was originally in our tree bank fund, and some changes that Mayor and Council made to the tree bank fund to insert the East Roswell project into that fund caused that portion of the project for City Hall to come out, so we've included it in your mid-year for consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. Item number 8 has to deal with the electric vehicle charging stations, I believe. So GE was the original manufacturer of those stations, and they got out of the industry. ChargePoint is kind of the industry leader, so they actually took over the operation of the network that those charging stations are on, but they only did it for a short period of time. I think basically to finish up, all of these stations were done through a GFA grant, and there was a certain amount of time that they had to be operational. So ChargePoint continued to keep those operational, but at the end of this year, they're going to stop that entire network. So as of right now, if you're a new driver or a new person wanting to charge, you can't charge anyway. They don't even take any new customers. It's only the old customers that were already registered for the network. But at the end of this year, all of the network goes down. My understanding is that there's a way that we could configure these GE stations to where they're just always on. We haven't gotten into those details to find out. We haven't gotten responses from GE to know that. But that doesn't allow any more reporting. That does not put us on a network. So the network is a app that drivers go on and look and see where the stations are at, whether or not they're being used at the time, so they know which stations to go to charge. And it also allows us the opportunity to impart a fee for the charging. All of that would go away at the end of this year. So I think we can keep them up operating long enough to get these stations changed over to the new stations. The other thing is, if any of them go out for any reason at any time now, we're not going to get the service, but there's not going to be anybody to even talk to at the end of this year. So they'll be orphaned by the end of this year. And I guess as long as they're on, we can charge, is what I'm understanding, although I don't have any details on that yet. So we're looking to be proactive, get some new stations out here that's with the industry leader, which is ChargePoint, and they've got a huge network. So the drivers would pull those up and be able to see what stations, where they're at, if they're available, and then they could come with their app, turn the stations on and charge their vehicles, and then we can also get reporting off of that.
So the question is then, none other company will pick up a ChargePoint network, or GE manufacturer network, then ChargePoint network. Nobody else will pick up on GE charging station and provide the network?
No, GE's out. Their network.
I know. GE's out.
So their network,
ChargePoint will be out at December 31st. My question is, moving forward, nobody else will pick up to service and maintain those GE original charge station?
No, sir. They're just an orphan station. They don't maintain them. They don't do anything with them. The only thing ChargePoint is doing is keeping them on a network right now. So at the end of this year, they're done. There'll be no more parts. There'll be no more service. So once those stations, if and when those stations go down, they're done. There's not even anybody to work on those. So I know that that will be gone. When that will happen, I don't know. It depends on when the stations break. At this point, right now, I think they're running, but we can't even get onto them to really see what's going on now. And at the end of this year, there's nothing. We do have ChargePoint to kind of talk to right now, but we can't even put new customers on them right now. So it's only the ones that were signed up before. But at the end of this year, there's nobody that's saying they want that, because they've got their own stations.
So have you studied the possibility of leasing? Because it seems like this technology might be changing and evolving after, in a couple of years. Have you ever studied the possibility of leasing instead of purchasing?
We have. There is a program out there through Georgia Power that we can do it through the utility billing, that they can actually come, even though they're an electric utility with the service area, they can provide these products through a utility type arrangement where they can put it on your bill. Either way, you're going to pay for it, but that wouldn't be upfront cost. But there is a program out there where they can come in and put them in through the bill.
Thank you.
Additional questions from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak?
So we're missing one of my points.
I haven't recognized you.
Okay.
Anyone in the public? I don't see anyone approaching, so I'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Zapata?
Yes, now transportation is their turn to come and talk about item number 18.
I'm sorry, I was confused.
Sorry, no, I have three
Okay.
points. Was one for Parks and Rec, another one for City Director of Administration, and
Okay.
the other one for transportation.
I'm on the same page now. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the item number 18 is the connected vehicle smart traffic signals. So I'll just take a brief moment and explain the existing traffic signal system we have in the city. So we have 100 traffic signals in the city, and we have a traffic control center located at our Hembry office. So from that traffic control center, we are able to communicate with each one of those 100 traffic signals through either fiber or remote connections. So the technology we have in our traffic signal system is pretty state of the art as of today. So what we're talking about here is the new technology, the newest technology available in the market. Now, in addition to the traffic signals talking to the traffic control center, we're now talking about signals talking to vehicles. That's where you add a lot of communication between vehicles and the traffic signals to add some safety features, such as alerting motorists as they're approaching a red light, alerting motorists as their traffic signal is about to turn green, and notifying motorists about an oncoming work zone if they're approaching a work zone. So these are some of the safety alerts that this new connected vehicle technology could provide. So,
Questions from council, or, I'm sorry.
yeah, I'll just add a little bit more. So GDOT started this initiative a few months ago. Out of the 100 traffic signals we have, 35 of them are on GDOT's Regional Traffic Operations Program. So GDOT is paying 100% towards those. And the signals that are on GDOT's program are all traffic signals on Holcomb Bridge and all traffic signals on Highway 92. And that's a total of 35. So the remaining 65 are on us, and we have the opportunity to partner with GDOT now and pay only 20%, which is $2,000 per intersection. So the staff's proposal is to do 25 of the remaining 65 in the upcoming year, which is 2020. And if you approve tonight, we'll come back for the full cycle budget request for the fiscal year 2021 for the remaining 40. And the cost for those would be $80,000, and that would still be the 20%, and ARC is paying the remaining 80%. So all 100 of our traffic signals would be upgraded with the new technology.
I don't want to cut you off again. Questions? Councilmember Zapata?
Yes, a follow-up. So how many cities in the state of Georgia have adopted this new unproven technology?
So this has been out. We've been talking to vendors, but of course, something like this needs an initiative by the agency like GDOT, where it would be very widespread. Only then it is more beneficial. So what GDOT is thinking is pretty much all of Metro Atlanta area. Now, not all agencies want to get on board, so we just don't know how many agencies are going to get on board. But I believe, knowing the industry, knowing the peer professionals in other agencies, I think most cities and counties are going to opt to get on board. This is the right time, and especially with the 80% funding match from ARC, staff believes this is a pretty good opportunity for the city.
Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of comments on item 16 and 18. We just sat through a work session and learned about the movie industry coming here to Roswell. And one of the items we learned about was the movie that was just done, 3 or 4 weeks ago, where they used City Hall. And City Hall was paid, according to the presentation we saw, about $15,000 by that movie company to use City Hall. And so I just think that completing the project to make City Hall look right and look up to date, look nice, landscape-wise is important because City Hall is one of those assets that the movie industry seems to be very interested in. So that's my comment on that one. Mohammed, while you're still here, item number 18, did I hear you say this is a safety issue?
So this is an added safety layer. You know how we used to have the red light running cameras? What the red light running cameras did is they caught everybody who was behind a queue and they were running the light. Those are not the vehicles that cause crashes. The vehicles that cause crashes on red light running are the ones who are just not looking at the traffic signal, and it's 10, 20 seconds into their red light and they're just not looking and zooming through the intersections. Those are the ones that cause bad crashes. So one of the features of this new connected car technology is it alerts motorists as they're approaching a red traffic signal that, hey, there is a red signal ahead, please slow down. If they're if they're waiting on a red light, it alerts them that, hey, be cautious, the signal is about to turn green. And then, this is the basic technology that we could add, and then there's layers that could be added further up on top. So the vendor, they've been also talking about a response to emergencies. The city could opt to add some extra equipment to their fire trucks and their police cars, and then they could communicate to the traffic signals as well. So if an emergency truck, a fire truck is going to respond to an emergency, and they turn a certain feature on, they could talk to the traffic signals coming ahead of them and turn them all green for the direction that they are moving into. So yes, I would say this definitely adds some safety features into our system.
Interesting technology. Thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So I feel every request on this list is justified. So there's no question around the justification. For me, I guess really my question and hesitation comes around timing and just really, I understand there was good detail provided by staff on here's the reasons why these were the things selected for the mid-year request. But ultimately, I definitely see some things in here that could easily wait the 6 months and be in our normal budget cycle. And the advantage to that is I feel that increases transparency with the community because that's when we have the long list of deciding everything that's going into our budget. Councilman Tizer brought up safety, which I think is absolutely crucial, and I appreciate him bringing that up. If we were in a situation where a larger number of cars had adopted this technology and it was something that was going to be more immediately impactful, then I think that'd be an argument for absolutely doing it right now. Again, I think it's justified. It's something I support, but I think a lot of things in here, it's just. As I mentioned last time, I'd like us to discuss both for the actual budget process as well as the mid-year to ensure that we really are going through everything and really making sure that the elected officials at this dais, and of course in preparation in room 220, are getting to really walk through everything to make sure that we're properly prioritizing for the community.
Councilmember Judy.
This question's for Mohammed. Is there a chance if we do not accept this right now, the 80% ARC funding goes away when we get to it?
Actually, we would still have the opportunity in the upcoming full cycle, so we could request then. But after that, there may not be any opportunity. And the reason why staff suggested if we could start now as part of the mid-year and be ready for some implementation early next year is, for technology, there is always some learning curve for staff. It's better to get on board on something like that with a smaller batch, but, try and learn how it gets installed, how to run it, how to operate it, how to maintain it, rather than getting a whole big batch and then trying to figure that out.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I understood, that only one city so far has adopted this technology.
That was City of Marietta as a test project a couple years ago. Yes.
Okay. So I think it's fair to say that this is an early adoption of unproven new technology with current low level of adoption. Because we don't have many cars today that carry this technology. You have probably to download an app that might distract you on the car. And so the level of adoption is very low right now. And the offer from GDOT will still be available for our next full fiscal year. And then back then we have time to either first see how many more cities adopted this technology, what is the positive impact of this technology on these communities, and maybe some even update or upgrade of the software of the technology from now until then. So I see that the best way when you approach a red light is not get distracted by your phone and pay attention to the red light and the traffic ahead of you. So I think that I don't sense the urgency of this. I will be very, very happy to look into this in more details with more information about vendors, maybe vendor presentations to us to explain from A to Z the pros and cons of this technology. And then I understand that will be even more than $50,000 to adopt throughout all the traffic lights in the city. So I will, propose to take a look in detail to this item for the next full fiscal year.
Additional comments from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing no one come forward, I'll bring it back to council, and I would like to say I had extensive meetings with our finance department over this mid-year budget, and very lengthy descriptions on what's needed, why it's needed, and I'm very confident with this mid-year budget. And I would also like to say that I have never known Roswell to sit back and be a follower. We've always been a leader, and this is another area that we lead in, and people actually look to us rather than us looking to other people to see what they've done. So having said that, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, motion to approve the proposed mid-year budget review with the exception of item number 18, connected vehicle smart signals for $50,000.
We've got a motion to approve with the exception of number 18. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Palermo. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And we've got Tizer, Zapata, and Palermo in favor. All those opposed. We've got Councilmember Judy and Councilmember Wilsey. And it carries. I didn't see that coming. The next item on the agenda is the Community Development Department. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Item number 3, approval of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code to Section 9.5.11, letter C, vehicle sales or leasing, new, and Section 9.5.11, letter D, vehicle sales and leasing, comma, used. This is the second reading. Ms. Dybel or Mr. Davidson?
Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code by modifying Section 9.5.11, vehicle sales rental. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to their authority, do hereby amend Section 9.5.11, vehicle sales rental, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the second reading.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the second reading for Article 9.511, letter C2 and letter D2, to add a letter G and a letter L with the following language. Excuse me, though. Background, this went to committee in August. It was initiated by council on September 9th. It went to Planning Commission, was approved, recommended for approval on October 16th, and the first reading was approved on November 12th. So this is the language that will be added. When the facility is used as a showroom only, the minimum lot size is not required. A facility is considered a showroom only in instances where the entirety of the inventory is kept within a building. There shall be no outdoor storage or display of inventory. Here's the section C in the code currently. It'll be added, letter G will be added to this, and in letter D, it'll be letter L. Do you have any questions? Staff recommends approval of the second reading.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. Just for clarification, Ms. Dybel, now, what is for, if something does not fall under this ordinance, they fall under the current ordinance, what is the minimum lot requirement?
So the minimum lot requirement, I'm under 2A here. So the minimum lot size for new is 1.5 acres, and for used is 0.75 acres.
Thank you.
Okay.
Additional comments, questions from council? We've got a recommendation from our legal department. Mr. Davidson, would you read that?
Yes. Jackie, on number 1, when it says a facility is used as a showroom only, minimum lot size is not required. A facility is considered showroom only in instances where the entirety of the inventory is kept within an enclosed building.
Yes.
To prevent somebody from just putting a roof with some.
Okay. So you would like the language to indicate an enclosed building?
Right.
We can add that in, yes.
Councilmember Judy.
Mr. Davison, do we need to define that as air conditioning or heated or whatnot, so we just don't have, I mean, what's the definition of enclosed? I'm a little worried about that.
That would make it even more specific, so I don't think there's a harm with that. It would stop it from being a garage.
Yes. So if you want to add air conditioned, it's fine.
Glass. Additional questions from council? Is there anyone in the public that would, yes, please come forward.
Janet Russell, Roswell resident. I was unaware this was on here, but I'm confused. We have down where I live between the square and the river a used car lot that is our bane of our existence. However, the owners took over the little buildings that were next to it. One used to be a 7-Eleven type grocery store. The other one was a glass store and a liquor store. And they've decided that they can put vehicles inside the building that was the glass store. So it's like a showroom, except it's not really a showroom, and I don't know if they ever got permission to do it. And I don't know how they got the whole cars inside this place that's the size of a drugstore, but they do it, and I'm just, are they grandfathered in so they don't have to do anything that the city says? Because it's really an eyesore that they use the whole front of the parking lot in front of where the two little stores were to cover excess inventory in addition to the big parking lot where they have all their used cars and the 3 buildings that are in the back that would never pass any zoning codes today. They've all been grandfathered in, you know, like a trailer and a this and a that. But the showroom in the front, will that be covered by this? Because it was never intended to be a showroom. They just snuck the cars in one night, and I don't know if they dropped them in from the roof or what, but it's a real blight on our street, on Highway 9 as it is, and having that there with all the excess cars that sometimes are parked right up to the curb. We don't have sidewalks, as you well know, so they just park right up to the curb in front of those stores where there used to be like little bits of parking for customers. I think we need to look at that. You can't just take any building and make it into a showroom because you want to put 2 fancy cars or 3 cars inside. You probably, none of you know that because you don't live near there, but I drive by it at least or 6 times a day. Can't walk by it, no sidewalks, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. And I would like to ask Jackie to respond to that. Now, Ms. Dybel, tell me if I'm correct, but I know that on other properties, we do not let them show vehicles in the right-of-way, in the public right-of-way, correct?
That's correct.
So code enforcement could be sent out there to
Yes.
correct that issue?
Yes.
And then can you help me with the zoning and?
Related to that, the zoning in the historic district for the downtown mixed use or any of the zonings in the historic district do not actually allow used cars or new cars sales. So when and if that business ever goes out of business, and within the timeline, because we do have that limitation, a new car business could not go in there unless they came in within the timeline that we have.
So are you telling me that where the glass company used to be in the convenience store, that those are zoned for used car lots?
No. A used car lot. You're going to take it? No.
That particular piece of property is already subject to a citation issued by code enforcement. The assistant city attorney has been dealing with that, and as most things happen in court action, it takes a little bit longer to deal with. But we are aware of the issue with that piece of property, and code enforcement has been dealing with it.
Thank you, Ms. Wakefield. That clarifies. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
Mayor Henry, first I just want to mention as well and clarify. So Ms. Wakefield actually clarified that the property mentioned was not in compliance, which is what I expected based on the lot requirements and other rules within the historic district. And also, I want to clarify the fact that there is a sentence that there shall be no outdoor storage or display of inventory. Therefore, parking a car, parking an automobile outside would be a violation of this and therefore not compliant. And with that, I would like to motion to approve the second reading with the 2 updates that were suggested. So the update to ensure that it's an enclosed building, and the update to show, and I would take staff's recommendation on the best way to show conditioned, whether that's conditioned, air conditioned, climate control. Mr. Davidson, do you have a preference with staff or climate controlled?
We've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tizer. All those in favor, please raise your hands, and it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Item number 4, approval of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Section 12.7.8, definitions for flood damage prevention only. This is the second reading. Ms. Bromberg or Mr. Davidson?
Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code, Section 12.7.8, definitions for flood damage prevention only, to make changes to definitions as requested by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to their authority, do hereby amend the Unified Development Code, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Thank you. Just as some background to remind you, this text amendment is a result of an audit that was performed by FEMA in April of this year. They have asked for some changes to be made. It's mostly some date updates, which I'll quickly go over. This was initiated by Council in September, went through Planning Commission in October, and the first reading was November 12th. The definitions are being updated to include just some extensions of the definitions for area of special flood hazard. They're adding this extension for all floodplain and floodprone areas at or below the future conditions flood elevation. It's just an extension of really what we're already practicing, but our language was just missing from the definition. And that all streams with drainage area of 100 acre or greater shall have the area of special flood hazard delineated, which is what our practice is today. None of these definitions change our ordinance in its actual implementation and the effect that it has on the properties within our city. For the definition of existing construction, it's a correction of the date at the end of that definition to reflect December 15th of 1977, which was the date that the ordinance is in effect, as well as adding that to the end of existing manufactured home park or subdivision. For manufactured home park or manufactured home subdivision, this definition was just not included. It's referenced as a term in our definitions, but there was no definition included. So it's a parcel or contiguous parcels of land divided into 2 or more manufactured home lots for rent or sale. 2 additional definitions with the date added to the end, new construction as well as new manufactured home park or subdivision. Planning Commission did recommend approval, and staff recommends approval of second reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does council have any questions? Is there anyone in the public? Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Janet Russell, since this was originally approved in 1977, I'm wondering if the definition of manufactured home needs to be revised, because in those days a manufactured home was basically a trailer, and now we have homes that could be manufactured with 3D printers, and we have other simple homes, you know, the tiny home thing. So I think we need to redefine and clarify what a manufactured home is, because we have lots of options these days that didn't exist in 1977, including the internet, among other things. So I think we need to redefine that and clarify what a manufactured home is by definition, not just say manufactured home, because I've heard a lot of rumblings in the city when this came up, and they said, trailers, oh my God, we don't want trailers. And I had to clarify and say, no, you can build a house now, a manufactured cabin for $80,000, and it's, quote, manufactured, but it's not a trailer. Or you have a 3D printer that can build you one too. So I think we need to step into the 21st century and acknowledge that. Since 1977, some of you weren't born yet. Thank you.
Thank you. To follow up on her question, Ms. Bromberg, let me ask you this, because I know that in my neighborhood, or close to my neighborhood, a manufactured home went in. And when I say manufactured, it was actually built somewhere else and put in pieces. And I believe the Chick-fil-A at the corner of Highway 9 and Holcomb Bridge is going to be the same thing. So how is that, how do you break that definition away?
That's actually defined by the International Building Code, not necessarily by a definition that we would assign to it, and we adopt that code, and so those definitions would come along with it. The definitions specifically being referred to tonight are only associated with the FEMA regulations, and those are FEMA definitions that apply to the FEMA ordinance. So it is not breaking that down into further detail. That definition does then tie to the International Building Code, which they also use. So they're all, you are correct in stating that that definition would include all of those, but the building code definitions keep that up to date for us without us having to make any changes.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward from the public? Is there anyone in council with additional comments, questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the second reading?
Motion to approve by Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Bromberg.
Item number 5, approval of the initiation of a text amendment for changes to the Unified Development Code due to the adoption of the Historic District Master Plan. Ms. Dybel?
Yes, this is the initiation of the text amendment to Article 8 related to the Historic District Master Plan amendment changes to the UDC. So the background for the amendment itself, it went to a work session on October 28th, and then it went to committee on November 20th. But for the master plan itself, it went through a committee and started in the fall of 18, and the master plan document was adopted in August of 2019. The text amendment includes changes to add a regulating map and changes to the UDC. So this is the proposed regulating map that has been included as part of the text amendment. Here's a closer view to show you the character area of Magnolia, Mimosa Boulevard area, and Atlanta Street. This area shows you portions of Mimosa, Sloan, Marietta Highway. This is Atlanta Street. This area is the Canton Street, Alpharetta, and the lower Canton area down along Elizabeth Way. Portions of the text amendment, as we've discussed recently, relate to the regulating plan, the setbacks that are established, the 40-foot wooded landscape strip along parts of State Route 9, the types of buildings, the protected view zone that will be added, the alternative compliance, which will allow the Historic Preservation Commission to use alternative design approach, the indications related to alternative compliance, and what is not allowed to be used. So the HPC would not be allowed to use alternative compliance related to the 40-foot wooded landscape strip. And then the criteria that would allow the HPC only to approve alternative compliance related to the 5 items listed here. And then, of course, any of appeals related to the C of A must also still go back to the mayor and council. So the only item that's been discussed a little bit during all the meetings is this section here. And we're looking at the property that is the Peachtree Salvage Old Antique Store property that currently has a 0-foot setback, whereas all the other 0-foot setbacks that are shown on the regulating plan have existing buildings. So this one does not, and it's been addressed for us to discuss. Staff has discussed that, and since the portions to the south are 0, and the piece to the north, which is actually zoned downtown mixed use, where this is zoned downtown shopfront, shows 20, we've looked at possibly if included in this initiation as a 10-foot setback on that property. As you know, this is initiation only. The next step would be going to if initiated tonight, it would be heard by the Historic Preservation Commission for their recommendation in January. Then it would go to Planning Commission also in January, and then it would be first reading at Mayor and City Council in February of 2020. Staff recommends approval of the initiation.
Does council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Henry. Thank you, Ms. Dybel. So great presentation, and really thank you again to all of Community Development, really the Historic Preservation Commission, and really the entire Historic District Master Plan Committee that have worked so hard on this. Again, I think there's so many great improvements that really will just protect and enhance our historic district. And regarding, for those of you that did not listen to the discussion that we had before about the 0-foot setbacks on Canton Street and Webb Street right there, the concern is, I completely understand the thought process at first, thinking that the property to the south of it having 0 setback, in which case perhaps you consider that to be something somewhat compatible. I think it is important to look at properties on both sides, but more importantly is the fact that the 0-foot setback ones south are not on small 5-foot sidewalks. They're on very wide sidewalks, and that does really change the perception and the character. So, and a lot of those are 1 story. And whereas in here you'd be able to have 2 stories and right on top of a 5-foot setback. For those of you that are familiar with walking in this area, think of when you're walking on the south side of Webb Street and you're right next to Salt. You're on that tiny little sidewalk and you have the building right there at the sidewalk. And imagine that instead if it's a 1-story building, imagine it's a 2-story building. So you'd have this towering over this really thin sidewalk. So I think it really would be very reminiscent of Vickers and in a different way. So Vickers is an extra story, so you could argue this would be shorter right at the sidewalk. It'd be 2 stories instead of 3, but at the same time, Vickers has much larger sidewalks. So I still feel, of course, Vickers is out of character, but that's why I feel that the comparison is very relevant. So I think it's absolutely crucial that both on Canton Street and Webb Street, we're either requiring much wider sidewalks or requiring the larger setback, which is what staff has come recommending, given the properties just adjacent to the north. So I'm certainly flexible as long as we're not setting ourselves up for another Vickers-type property.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor. Yes, on this particular piece of property, I personally would not be opposed to a 10-foot setback, but I also want to respect the work that has gone into the Historic District Master Plan and the committee and the HPC that's put it together. I know that there are some tools available to them with the alternative compliance rule, but as far as since we are initiating, I would love to get their opinion and their thoughts on whether or not they feel like having the alternative compliance is enough protection and gives them the flexibility for this project, this piece of property, or if changing the setback for this makes sense. But again, a lot of work has gone into it, the way that it's being recommended.
May I answer that, Mayor? Since it is being initiated and it will go to the HPC for a recommendation and then on to Planning Commission also for a recommendation, we can leave it, if you choose to do so, at 0 and then bring that up during that portion while we go through that process and ask them, yes, we see that it's 0 as indicated by the committee, but what are your thoughts of possibly 10 feet? And yes, they do have the compliance where they do have the authority that if they wanted something to be pushed back, they can do so. That'll be written in, that is technically in the document. But while we're in process, both the HPC and the Planning Commission could make that recommendation if they chose to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Steibel.
Yeah,
Yes.
and just to continue that, with the alternative compliance, they could actually even push it back further than 10 feet, depending on what the particular project is. If they saw an opportunity to do an outdoor plaza or a pocket park or something like that, they could.
Yes.
They would have the authority to do that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Judy.
I agree. I think this is a unique situation. I do think that this plan was unanimously voted in by the committee. I could go either way tonight with the initiation of the 10-foot, but I would like to talk to the committee and their reasoning for that before we read this into ordinance. Because I think it's important that we take their hard work and expertise of the group to heart. I think that this plan has made sure we're not going to have a Vickers in the historic district because of the 2 stories, the protective view zones, the alternative compliance, all those type things. So I think we need to get away from comparing everything to Vickers and doing that as we've done over the past couple months. So this plan is good for the city. It's been unanimously voted on by the committee of many different thoughts and unanimously voted on by us. So I don't want to go and pick apart this thing, but I could support either way because I do see this as a unique piece of property.
Councilmember Tyson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm the only council member who actually lives in the historic district. Not only that, but my property is pretty much almost contiguous to this piece of property. I can certainly see it out my back bedroom window. I walk this particular strip probably 3 or 4 times a day easily. So I understand the item that's at issue. I'd love to have a little bit more room to walk all the way up to Canton Street. However, I'd like to ask my colleagues tonight to move this forward as is, and let's get the opinion of the experts who spent so much time on this item, bring that back to us through the initiation process, and let us know how they feel and what they think should be done here. Maybe the answer is some sort of additional kind of process that we haven't thought about. That's kind of what the initiation process is for. So I would ask my colleagues if they would move this forward as is and ask the committee and the HPC to weigh in on what their thoughts are. Thank you.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, definitely this is a special piece of property, and then, we keep comparing it to the property across the street, and I say, why not to just adjacent north, just touching each other with the north? How many feet is the right next to the property on the north side?
The north side property has a 20-foot setback.
20 foot, okay. So the right next, touching each other properties has 20 feet setback, and the one across the street has 0. So I think we have time to do it right one time, and I don't see any problem to send to HPC or PC what the vision is of the mayor and council, and then they can agree or disagree, but we are the elected official who can, express the vision from the residents' point of view. So I don't have any problem to send with 10 or 20 foot to HPC and PC for them to take a look and come back to us and justify why not make sense this proposed change.
Additional comments from council? Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you. So I actually have a question before I'll have some comments later. But my question is, so if we look at this property, it's my understanding that due to the protected view zone right on Canton Street, it's a maximum of 2 stories.
Yes.
But it's my understanding further back, it can become higher, maybe 3 stories.
3.
And so my question is, on Webb Street towards the back, is there a protected view zone, or does there become a point where it can be 3 stories right up to the sidewalk?
So the front would be a 40-foot protected view zone after the setback, and on the side street, it's 25 feet.
Okay, so it would be, so on the side street, so the side street would have 2 stories, and then 25 feet back, it could go up to the 3rd story?
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. So I'll save my comments for later, but thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Steibel. Any other questions from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Judy Meir. I live at Shagbark Trail in Roswell, and I am chairman of HPC. And as I've been thinking about all this, the 0 foot setback on the part of Canton Street south of Webb Street was not always set back as far as it is now. That sidewalk was parking spaces filled in over time for the restaurants. So in order for the zero setback to be the same on the antique mall lot, that would have to be set back farther. Otherwise, the zero setback would not align with those other buildings. That does not have the parking spaces there. So that might be something that we need to consider as well. If you're looking at the same 0-foot setback, it would be set back more like 10 feet, would be at least 10 feet. So we can have that discussion too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Yes, ma'am.
Denise Rao, 170 Charleston Circle, Roswell. I was a member of the committee, and when I viewed the committee where this was discussed, I was actually pretty shocked that there was a 0-foot setback on Canton. Obviously, one of our objectives was, it's very clear, no more Vickers on Canton Street. However, when I look at this piece of property, it is clearly, to me, it has a foot in each of the sub-areas. So it's not exactly like South Canton, but it's not exactly like north of it either. And I actually think that staff came up with the perfect solution, a 10-foot setback, because that actually does put it, it kind of splits the difference. And part of the objective with these setbacks, one of the things that really came out of the charrettes and the tours, the residents really like more either situational, historic, traditional setbacks. They really were not fans of the 0 setback. And one of the objectives of the master plan was to provide for situations like this, where you would look to your right, look to your left, and it would be compatible with both. So I think the 10-foot setback pretty much does that. And I also wanted to comment about the sidewalks, because I know that was discussed too. We just never discussed that as part of the committee. So as a committee member, I am all for wider sidewalks, and I have to say, last night I had carolers to my left and cars to my right, and I would have appreciated a wider sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing no one approach, I'll bring it back to council, and if I'd like to make a comment. I'm not sure which way this is going to go, whether it goes to HPC and Planning Commission as a 0-foot setback or a 10-foot setback. Regardless of that, I would appreciate it if staff would make it very clear that we have had a robust debate on this issue for council, and we do value their opinions. They are recommending bodies to us, so please make sure that they have the opportunity to learn what we had to say here this evening and make sure that they have a similar robust conversation. I'd appreciate it if you'd pass that along. Any other further comments? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't know if it's possible, if you want to add some flexibility, to put a minimum of 10 feet minimum, so you can add flexibility if they want to have a plaza or anything else, they can do so, but I don't know if this is something that this mayor and council will support, to have the minimum 10 to give some flexibility to future development.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So, Ms. Debble, I have another question as well, because I believe in our liaison meeting, it was discussed that this was the one property that had 0 feet setbacks that didn't already have an existing property.
Yes.
I'm sorry, an existing building. But if I'm understanding correctly, if I look at the bottom of this picture, then I believe that's the parking lot with 0-foot setbacks as well?
Yes, well, some of the buildings, okay, so the buildings that are shown on here are technically what they consider the, how did Julie put it, historic in a sense, but you're right, that is the parking lot area, because that building does go all the way down there, but that's the parking lot for Rock and Taco.
Right. And the reason I bring that up is because, again, just wanting to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success and what the community wants to see, and such great points from two community members. So basically, my concern here is by building right there, there could be the ability to build with a 0-foot setback, again, on top of a 5-foot sidewalk, which would really, right there at a much busier automobile area. So with those tiny sidewalks and a lot more traffic right there, again, just gives me concern and resulting in another type Vickers, which we want to avoid. So I guess first off, help me understand how the protected view zone works right there, both on Canton Street as well as Magnolia for that bottom parcel.
Okay, so on Canton Street, as it would be the front, it would be 40 feet.
Okay.
And then on a side street, it's 25.
In 2 stories.
And so it would be 2 stories until you got past the protected view zone. And once you got past the protected view zone, it could go up to 3.
Okay, that's helpful, because what I want to do in my motion is I do want to address these 2 items, but in my motion, I want to stress and really spell out so it's completely clear for the HPC, for the Planning Commission, for the committee, for everyone to be aware that we are encouraging and requesting a lot of discussion to make sure that it's going to best meet the intent that was determined by the committee. So I'm obviously not ready to make a motion now, not until the mayor gives me the green light, but I do want to just make it clear that in my motion, I am going to want to address these, and I am going to spell out, just encouraging that discussion.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question, Jackie, for clarification. Along Magnolia, where there's a 0-foot setback shown now, what is the sidewalk requirement there?
I believe 5 feet.
It would just be 5, okay.
I believe 5. I could be incorrect on that.
We actually work with transportation to find out what it would be along Canton Street, and it would wrap around Magnolia as well. It's a 13-foot total shoulder from behind the curb. That typically would be a 6-foot sidewalk with a 7-foot what we call planting strip. When you look at the typical section for that can also be a hard surface. So it could potentially be a 13-foot sidewalk width with tree wells placed along it for the street trees.
Right.
So if you envision what is in front of the Vickers corner there, a very similar situation, and it's a 13-foot width from the back of the curb to the right-of-way line.
So effectively, that would be a 13-foot setback from the curb already.
Correct.
Even in that situation.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Oops, sorry. I had recognized Councilmember Tizer earlier.
Thank you. This piece of property that we're talking about right now at the southern end is a little bit different in that I believe it has on the Canton Street side adjoining it in front of Rock and Taco a sidewalk that is significantly wider than the rest of Canton Street. And so my understanding is that would have to wrap around.
Yes, if someone ever chose to build on that portion, then they would have to meet those requirements.
Right. So while it says 0-foot setback, by the time you put the sidewalk and the buffers and everything else in, it would and protected view zone issues, it winds up looking like what's in front of Rock and Taco right now, pretty much.
Yes, once you added in the protected view zone and everything else.
So this piece of property is a little bit different, but this is specifically why I'd like to see us send it back to the initiation process without a specific recommendation, so that they have the ability to come back and tell us, what we need to do there.
Councilmember Palermo.
Now, I just want to be clear. I thought I heard from Ms. Bromberg that there would be a requirement for 6-foot sidewalk both on Canton Street and Magnolia at this property.
That is my understanding, yes. So just to clarify, the lines that you're seeing on this image are the right-of-way line, not the edge of the road. And so, yes, that is correct. That is the numbers that was provided by Transportation. This was 13-foot shoulder for the typical section for that roadway.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions from council? I'll call for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So, again, I think everything this committee has done has been so helpful, and really appreciate the feedback provided tonight. I strongly believe there is not the interest to have these, have a 2-story building right on top of a 5-foot or a 6-foot sidewalk, and we absolutely need to be part of the solution with that. With that, I'm going to offer a compromise of a motion, and with that, so I'm going to have 2 to 3 additions to the motion. So I motion to approve this initiation with the following updates. A 10-foot setback on both Canton Street and Magnolia, with the request that from all the committees reviewing this, that they are going to closely review their recommendation as really a best practice to ensure there's not a 2-story building on top of a 5-foot sidewalk. So that's addition number 1. And then addition number 2 is as a compromise, I will leave this bottom property in my motion as a 0-foot setback, but the same request that these committees closely review. Okay.
First
Oh,
one
sorry.
should have been
Yes.
Canton and Webb.
Yes, thank you. So the first one, Canton and Webb, 10-foot setback on both streets, and requesting that all the committees reviewing are closely reviewing their recommended best practice recommendation and looking at both sidewalk size and setback. And then addition number 2, the bottom property on the corner of Magnolia and Canton Street. In this motion, I will leave it as a 0-foot setback. That is something that I will have real concerns with, but I want to make sure that the committees are looking at this closely and providing their advice and recommendations, both sidewalk and setback for this property as well. So that is my motion to initiate with these 2 updates.
Second.
We've got a motion by Councilmember Palermo, a second by Councilmember Zapata. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it is Zapata, Judy, Palermo, and Wilsey. All those opposed? Councilmember Tizer. The motion carries.
Item number 6, approval of the initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code to Article 10.3, signs. Ms. Dybel?
Yes, this is the initiation of a text amendment to Article 10.3. So some background here. This was heard at committee twice back in October, first time, and we made some changes after that, and the second time at committee on November 20th. So what this changes is to add, amend section 10.310, the wall sign dimensions letter A, sign area max to change the downtown shopfront sign area requirement, which is currently 9 square feet, to 32 square feet for buildings with a store frontage of more than 30 linear feet. All other buildings in the downtown shopfront zoning may have a wall sign of 18 square feet. And this was discussed with the Historic Preservation Commission, I believe, at their November meeting. Staff recommends approval of the initiation.
Does council have any questions? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? I will entertain a motion.
Motion to initiate.
Motion to initiate by Councilmember Palermo. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tizer. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. I would like to note for the record that Councilmember Judy was not here for that item. And, we're going to Councilmember Judy, which, let's go ahead and skip to public safety. Councilmember Wilsey. Well, he missed it now.
Item number 8, approval of a text amendment to Article 13.1, offenses involving public peace and order. Item number 8 from the Public Safety Department, approval of a text amendment to Article 13.1, offenses involving public peace and order by adding Section 13.1.14, unmanned aircraft in the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. This is the second reading and will be presented by Chief Conroy and David Davidson.
Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Article 13.1, offenses involving public peace and other, of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. Chapter 13, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 13.1, offenses involving the public peace and order of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by adding a new section 13.1.14 entitled Unmanned Aircraft to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Chief Conroy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an ordinance that will basically adopt the exact regulations that are in place by the Federal Aviation Administration. Actually, it states it shall be unlawful to within the City of Roswell to operate an unmanned aircraft in violation of the FAA restrictions. There's also a section that says it shall be unlawful within the City of Roswell to launch or intentionally land an unmanned aircraft from on any City of Roswell property, whether owned, leased, or otherwise possessed, unless such is authorized. And this is to promote safety. There's been a couple questions about what are the FAA regulations, and here's the standard ones. This is for recreational flyers. Basically, the drone must be flown no more than 400 feet in the air, must be within the line of sight of the pilot, cannot be operated within controlled airspace, cannot be operated where any flight is prohibited, cannot fly near other aircraft, cannot fly over groups of people, public events, or stadiums full of people, cannot fly near emergencies such as any type of accident response, law enforcement activities, firefighting, or hurricane recovery efforts, and cannot fly under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Thank you, Chief. We all received an email this week regarding recreational drone use. Apparently, it's quite popular out at Girard Landing, along with rocket launching. Would they still be able to use a drone at Girard Landing?
So under the ordinance in Section D, where it says they cannot be launched or landed unless authorized from city property. I spoke with the Parks Director, Jeff Leatherman's here in the back, and he said that is possible if we designate that park as a launching and landing facility.
And would we need to do anything with this ordinance this evening?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Does council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Judy.
So I've received a couple comments from some folks. They're worried that the City of Roswell's taking away rights that they currently have, and that's not the case. Actually, the FAA has already put these regulations in place. Is that correct?
Correct. This is actually modeling the FAA ordinances that are already in place, and one of the considerations for the FAA is no jurisdiction can have more restrictive requirements than the FAA.
So we're not doing anything that the FAA has not already regulated?
Not at all.
Basically, what we are doing is a public safety ordinance in which we can make sure, be it Alive After 5 or Live in Roswell or any event here in Roswell, that if there's a drone overhead, we don't have to call the FAA and wait for somebody to get down here. We can take care of it ourselves in Roswell based upon the regulations that are already set forward.
Exactly correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So I have a few questions to follow up. So I'm not sure if this is for the chief or for Mr. Davidson, but in the ordinance it mentions unless authorized or given the permission. What is the process for this council to decide that a certain park, certain location, certain day it's authorized? I'm guessing it's not through a second reading type process.
No, I think the rec commission could give you a recommendation, and if you wanted to allow it specifically, you could put it in an ordinance form or a resolution form, or you could just leave that to the rec commission.
Okay. And does that need to be determined tonight?
No, they can make such designations, and if you don't agree with it, you can always overrule it.
Okay, that was my first question. My next question is regarding, so there was a question regarding Sweet Apple Park. Is that Fulton County owned, or is that City of Roswell owned?
So the upper portion of Sweet Apple Park, adjacent to the school, that's the traditional fenced-in area with parking lot, is the City of Roswell property. The lower field that is traditionally the lacrosse field, and then adjacent to the school and also where the large playground is located, is Fulton County property.
Okay, so that's actually makes for a great example. So the part that's owned by the City of Roswell, it sounds like the Rec Commission can go ahead and decide to designate what days, times, if it's possible or not possible?
Correct. So the Recreation Commission has the ability to set policy associated with the use of parks and facilities, and we could take up a policy recommendation and then process that allowance, either whether it be a blanket allowance or by a permit allowance or registration allowance. It would have to be consistent with your ordinance that you're adopting today.
Okay, and then back to the chief or Mr. Davidson, the part that's owned by Fulton County because it's the school, this is not affected by that because this is purely for property owned by City of Roswell, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then now, for individuals, now does anyone flying a drone, even if it's on their own private property, do they have to be registered with the FAA, or do they just have to follow FAA rules?
So one of the requirements under the FAA is you must register your drone. You can do that online if it's less than 55 pounds. If it's over, there's a lengthier process.
Okay, you've answered all my questions, I appreciate it.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, a lot of my points have been covered already, but I just wanted to say that, the purpose of this ordinance is to ensure compliance with FIA. We do have the clause in here that unless otherwise authorized by the city. And so when a motion is made, I'd like to add a condition, or not a condition, but a recommendation that Parks and Rec take a look at opportunities where drones might be permitted to be flown, or some registration or approval process would be allowed.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilsey. Additional comments, questions from council? Seeing no hands up, is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Seeing no one approach, do we have a motion?
Yes, motion to approve item number 8 as written, just with a recommendation or guidance to Rec and Parks to take a look at opportunities for hobby use in parks.
We've got a motion by Councilmember Wilsey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. All those in favor, please raise your hands, and it passes unanimously. Now we'll go back to Environmental and Public Works. Councilmember Judy.
Sorry about that. Didn't know y'all worked that quick. Number 7, approval of a text amendment to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances, Chapter 24, Utilities and Services, Section 24.2.5B. This is the second reading. Mr. Davidson, sorry.
Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 24, Utilities and Services, Section 24.2.5B, Garbage and Recycling Containers, and Section 24.2.7, Yard Waste, Preparation and Placement for Collection of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendments, text of which is included herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Since this is very brief, I will just read the one sentence we are adding back into the code. In January, we made some modifications to this section, and inadvertently, one sentence was deleted during that process, and we are just adding that back into the code. It basically says, containers, including curbside recycling bins, shall be removed from the curb no later than the end of the day of collection. We're just restoring the code to its pre-January 2019 status.
Thank you, Mr. Skalsky. Does anyone have any questions? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve item number 7.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tizer. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to go ahead and take a little less than a 15-minute break, so if everyone would be back here at 5 till, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will go ahead and reconvene the meeting, and I would like to ask Councilmember Judy if you'll call the transportation items.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Transportation, here we go. Item number 9, approval to adopt the City of Roswell Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. Mr. Dave Cox.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is, we are at the very close to the end of the journey of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. I'm going to basically recap some of the highlights from our past discussions when we met at our work session in October and at our committee meeting just a few weeks ago, and mainly focus on some of the items that you had questions on and that generated some of the conversation in the past. Just some background, we kicked off the study about 9 months ago in April, and we immediately launched into a very large public involvement campaign in the late spring and early summer, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a moment. Then we went into the data gathering and processing and prioritization of the data. We did a lot of technical analysis over the summer months before developing our project list for a public review in September, and ultimately that we showed you in October and just a few weeks ago at the committee meeting. One thing we're very proud of is our public outreach. We had a stakeholder committee made up of 10 citizens here in Roswell. We also had members from Bike Roswell, our local advocacy group, as well as members of Rec and Parks, Roswell Police, Fulton County Schools. They gave us a lot of great guidance along the way. We also held 4 public meetings around the city, 2 in May and 2 in September, to review, to gain input and insight, as well as show our recommendations and get guidance from the public. We're also very proud of our outreach that we gathered from our public survey. We had over 500 residents submit comments through a public survey, which I don't think we've ever accomplished in transportation before as far as survey results. So we got a lot of great input there and basically raised awareness of the plan and got more people involved. Lastly, we did tactical outreach. This was important to us because it allowed us to speak directly to people who aren't typically involved in city functions. They're typically people who aren't wired into things that we're doing at the city. We went out and met with people at parks and got direct one-on-one surveys with them. So we got a lot of good insight from them too. The technical analysis, if you recall back in August, I think you guys saw 24 maps that look like this, looking at demands, attractions, characters, and other different analysis. I think we had almost 20 data points ranging from census data to looking at income levels, density, which percentage of people in our city are less likely to own automobiles. We want to make sure that we're focusing on where they are, where they're going. And this map is basically a summary. If you boil all those data points down into one map, this kind of shows you the propensity around the city. And you can see the darker areas show greater propensity and areas that we like to focus on. And you're going to see those in the recommendations in just a second. The implementation, we looked at a 30-year planning horizon. This is a summary of all the projects within that 30 years. So this is a snapshot of our needs and look at projects that we have a chance that can be implemented within that 30-year horizon. Now, the one point I want to make is this plan is aspirational in nature, so by adopting this plan, this does not commit us to building these projects. It does not commit us to the funding required to build all of these projects. This is just a plan that's based on today's needs and input from our public. It's very likely we're going to revisit this plan every 5 to 7, maybe even 10 years, but this is what our needs are identified as today. It's kind of hard to see on this graphic, but that's kind of a multitude of multi-use paths, bike lanes, sidewalks, and other needs around the city. And I'll be glad to go into more detail with you on these if you would like. One key thing that we kind of looked outside the box on was our public input revealed a lot of key activity centers. We called them hubs. The survey data kind of showed that there's clusters of activity around 5 key hubs in the city. None of them should be surprised to anyone, but we wanted to look at ways we can improve or focus on those connections to those points on the map. We already have a Roswell Loop trail system that was adopted in 2006. We've had some success with it, but we want to take a look and see how we can make that better. We came up with the Roswell Hub and Spoke system. We'll probably come up with a better name once we start implementing portions of it. But it's basically to draw focus and attention to those core needs that we could better prioritize moving forward. Other items that the bike ped plan will help us achieve, looking at new branding and wayfinding options. These are not only for new projects that we have in our plan, but existing assets that we already have on the ground today. Regional connections were very important. ARC at the regional level is looking at a lot of regional trail and bike ped planning, mainly along the 400 corridor. And we also want to focus on our connections to our neighbors in Cobb County with their trail network. We also want to focus on connections along Rucker Road that's under construction now, which will help our citizens better connect to Alpharetta and our neighboring cities. We also looked at some more maintenance practices, not necessarily with our bike ped plan, but when we do our general repaving program, repaving our roads, one thing we looked at was there are ways we could improve our bike facilities on those roads when we simply repave them. One of the systems we looked at was taking 6 to 12, 18 inches from the travel lanes when we repave and we put that edge line striping along the side of the road. We can, in some opportunities, we could do a little more space for the bike shoulders. This was important mainly on some of our steeper hills and grades in our city. We talked to Bike Roswell and they agreed that when you're riding a bicycle uphill, you're obviously going to be going a lot slower. You're going to have a greater conflict with vehicular traffic. So they were supportive of this measure that we're going to try to look at a case-by-case basis when we do our annual repaving of roads around the city. Another great thing that the plan is doing is looking at future recommendations for our sidewalk matrix. We have, I think, 150 sidewalk gaps around the city. We already have a great way we score and rank them today. This plan is looking and suggesting ways we can improve upon that. Any recommendations we make we'll bring to you at a later date, likely in the new year. So by adopting this plan today doesn't commit you to any of those recommendations. They're just suggestions at this point that staff will bring to you later. And also this plan will be a great starting point in the likely event in the future that we have a new funding opportunities, whether that be another round of T-SPLOST or there's a bond referendum down the road somewhere. We can easily pull the plan out and look what our needs are, short, mid, and long term, and start planning accordingly. So that's just a brief recap. We recommend that you adopt the plan, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Does council have any questions? Seeing no hands up, is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Do I have a motion?
Mayor,
Yes.
I have not a question, but I actually have a discussion point.
Okay, I wish you would have done that before we went out to the public, but I'll open it up to the public again.
Well, my thought process might have changed with great discussion from the public. But with that, what I want what I want to really discuss is, I think this is so important, so thank you to staff for working so hard with the public on such an important plan. I saw you out there time and time again. I saw you personally as well as so many from transportation, just being out there, interacting with the public, getting their feedback, whether not only through online, but really in person. And I think it's just fantastic. And I support this plan. I absolutely want to see it move forward, but there's a caveat with that. We have to take it seriously, and what I'm referring to is the fact that I feel people are sick and tired of just plans that don't implement. You know, they cost money, they get us excited, and then nothing happens. And Roswell has a long history of that happening long before any of us were serving. And so the reason I bring that up is because about 2 years ago, I brought forward that before any of us were serving, there was the Roswell Loop, which was passed by a prior council, the goal of really connecting our schools and our parks. And so I felt if that's really something that was implemented, we need to be working towards it. And the way we work towards it is through, we already have sidewalk requirements. If a developer is required to build a sidewalk, they should be building our vision. They should be building the sidewalk that we actually want to work towards, which is multi-use trails, which used to be in the Roswell Loop. Now I'm hoping this passes. It's going to be this new hub and spoke system. But if we're serious about it, then 2 years ago, when there was pushback and there wasn't support to require developers building those wider sidewalks, the excuse that I heard was, we're going to go through a bicycle pedestrian master plan, and we really should wait for that. So we've done that. We've got the plan. We've invested in it. We've heard from the community. So if we're serious about this, then we need to not only implement this today, but then also make it clear to staff that when a developer's building on one of these hubs and spokes type areas, that it's actually the wider sidewalk that's required to build multi-use trails. So that's step one, if we're serious about that. If that's not something that anyone on this council supports, then I encourage you to vote against this, because again, we should not just have a symbolic vote yes for a great plan. We should be willing to move towards it. And then also with that, so if there is support for that, then that's fantastic, but there's a second part of it. So you'd brought up reviewing this every 5 to 10 years. And what I think is important, that we're re-reviewing it much more frequently. And the reason is, as we continue to see a lot more redevelopment occurring in Roswell, then what that's going to be able to do is it's going to create the opportunity for this council or a future council to prioritize. Because right now, you have in this plan, and I don't have the exact page in front of me, you have the exact amount of miles that we have the goal of having with these multi-use trails and all their gaps and all those different details. As time goes on, those numbers are going to shrink, and perhaps priority might change in the sense of there might be really just some even smaller gaps to be able to really create our larger network. So I am hoping this implements. I'm certainly going to support it, and the key is I'm hoping this entire council will support it, not just with a symbolic vote yes, but with the action to actually get us there. Because seeing a 50-year plan, you're giving the honest expectations, all that stuff. I appreciate that. I'm the youngest one on this council, and even me seeing how long that plan is out far, I want to see as many Roswell residents get to enjoy really the fruits of your labor, and so that's why I'm hoping we'll have support for this tonight, and in that yes vote, it'll be clear to staff that we mean it, and that means as well not having developers build smaller sidewalks just to expect taxpayers to then tear up later on to build slightly wider ones when it's makes so much more sense to do right the first time. So I want to make that clear. I'd love a discussion from council if anyone has differing views or concerns. But again, I truly believe that's what a yes vote needs to represent, that we're making progress towards this plan and not just doing it because it looks good.
Additional comments? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Palermo brought up a great point. So I don't know if this will contemplate for future development, redevelopment on all these contemplated sidewalks and multi-trail that developers will have to build according with the needs of this area. I don't know if something we need to add in here or is something that we need to bring forward immediately so we don't miss any opportunity moving forward. And I totally agree with the great point raised by Councilmember Palermo.
Additional comments from council? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to the public again. Is there anyone that would like, yes, please come forward.
Sorry, Janet Russell, Roswell resident. I feel like I'm having one of those deja vu moments. Back in the 70s, this is exactly what I talked about when I said that the city should have some sort of a policy that every time a subdivision, a church, a park, a shopping center, a restaurant area was constructed, that it be connected by bike and ped paths. In the 70s, this is 50 years later, and we haven't done jack. The problem is, you have to prioritize. We have a lot of areas of old Roswell. I can't speak to East Roswell, which is new. We have areas that are never going to get redeveloped because they're a private home, and you can't force a person or a small business to build a sidewalk to connect, and we have it all over. You got a sidewalk that we built or a developer built, then you have a private home or a small business, and there's a gaping hole. And then there's another sidewalk on the other side that we made them build. We need to get our act together and connect these sidewalks. A good example was right on Pine Grove Road. You see people trying to walk down to Alive in Roswell, pushing a stroller, and they're plunged into dirt because the sidewalk just ends. And there's no way to get across the street. I can't stress it enough. I've waited 50 years almost, and I haven't seen this city do jack as far as sidewalks go. Where I live, it's been the flipping of the bird every year. There's an excuse, an excuse, an excuse. Always an excuse. We weren't the desirable place to live. And I'll remind you, there's a difference between walkable, which means walkable, and within walking distance. And currently, most of Roswell's within walking distance on this side of town, but it is not walkable. Certain of you can live right off of Canton Street and walk 3 or 4 times a day. Those of us that live in the old neighborhoods constructed in the 50s and 60s are within walking distance, but they are not walkable. And you have an obligation to long-term residents of this city to provide us with some sort of ability to get around this town besides in our car. So 50 years? Hell, I won't be here in 50 years. But I've been here for the first 50 and I've seen nothing happen.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Do I have a motion? Oops. Yes.
I have to agree with a couple of things that have been said. It'll be another 50 years. Today, if you look at the list of connecting sidewalks that transportation has, it's a number something like $43 million worth of backlog. We do roughly $500,000 to $1 million worth of sidewalk work a year. That means we're somewhere between 43 and 86 years behind. It's a huge amount of money that's required. It's not going to come from operating funds to get anywhere. We're going to have to look at some different methodologies. That's something we need to do in the new year to make it actually work. But thinking that it's going to come just magically out of the operating budgets, we'll all be gone. So I would encourage us next year to look at the backlog, look at the size of the number needed, and then start to think about how we're going to fund that, whatever way that might be. And I think that's really important to understand that while a development piece can help, that's a part of funding, okay? But it's not going to get us the whole way there, not even going to get us close. So I would encourage us to begin to look at ways to close a 43 to 86 year gap.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So I agree with that. Without a doubt, there is going to need to be, an understanding of just what the current costs are and the goals and all that. So I agree with everything that was just said. I just want to reiterate, and the part that I'm stressing is, let's use an example. Part of it, really, it looks like actually probably the smallest distance connecting 2 hubs is actually on Holcomb Bridge Road on the east side. So that creates a great opportunity. In fact, I remember probably about 2 years ago, someone came in really stressing how the value that the community would gain by having multi-use trails there and that opportunity. And so we just had a large development there, and that large development was required because of what we passed 2 years ago when I brought that forward. It was for the commercial corridors and the loop. The commercial corridors, this council unanimously supported, which I really appreciate. And so for that developer, and that's a large piece of property, that is going to be with the multi-use trail. That is going to reduce the amount of miles connecting those two hubs. There's other developments potentially going on there that will be reducing the miles needed, and so at least that's getting us a step in the right direction, versus with that one still looking like a smaller opportunity and perhaps, high on the priority list, and I don't have your priority list ahead of me. If instead they were to build that and then just build that with the smaller sidewalks, for this council to then go vote on spending money to tear that up just to become a bigger one, which becomes even more cost prohibitive. I think that's why we just need to make sure that if this is what we support, then we need to make sure that staff is making that clear to developers on those areas. This is what that sidewalk requirement is.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you. I, like everyone here, wish we had a magic wand that we could wave and just implement all of the sidewalks and trails that are being proposed, but we don't. I mean, we need $40 million or more. But I think there are ways that we can get there, some of them through developer-funded building. Would also look to staff to set some priorities, some short-term priorities that would come through the regular budget, and then also to work with, with finance and admin to kind of find some longer-term funding options. So I do support using a combination of all those tools that we have to take some positive steps forward on implementing this plan.
We're very excited because the budget season starts next month, so the timing of this is ideal in that regard.
Well, and let me just say, I'd like to point out to council that I'm going to bring forward a funding work session, whether it's going out for a bond, whether it's going out for any type of loans, but it's basically going to be a funding work session, so that when we look at all the capital projects, we know what our opportunities are to fund the many needed projects and how to prioritize those. Okay. Can I call for a motion now?
Can I do it? So, as the mayor said, it takes money. This what we were talking about earlier takes money in the police portion. This takes money. What we're going to next takes money. But I support this and look forward to looking at the funding options, and these things just don't happen. So I'm going to motion approve item number 9.
We've got a motion by Councilmember Judy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously.
All right, on to item number 10, approval of the Georgia 400 Holcomb Bridge Road interchange and express lane bridges aesthetics. Mr. Roth.
Thank you, Councilmember Judy. So just a quick recap on the bridge aesthetics item. So based on the MOU we have executed with the GDOT not too long ago, we owe bridge aesthetics details to GDOT by the end of the year for the 2 bridges to be built by GDOT with their express lane project, which is the Holcomb Bridge interchange, and GDOT's express lane bridge. So we have, for these 2 bridges, we have $2 million allocated in our T-SPLOST budget. And we also have $2.5 million allocated for the Big Creek Parkway Bridge that the city is about to start construction in the next 12 to 18 months. So we had a discussion on October 30th work session where we presented to you where the guidance was to bring the cost breakdown for all the aesthetic possible aesthetic improvements, and also you agreed to bring a consistent and unique Roswell look for all three bridges in the city of Roswell over 400. And the guidance was to basically match all the aesthetics for these three bridges to the pattern book from 2013. So after that work session, we went out to the public and received their input online for 1 week in the second week of November, and we received 965 responses. We shared that with you at the committee on November 20th, along with all the cost breakdowns for a lot of different options. So I'll just quickly go over the public input here. So the first question, we asked public 4 questions. The first question was, how important is it for Roswell to invest city funds to aesthetically enhance how the bridges across 400 will look in the future? So the 45% said very important, 45% said somewhat important, and about 10% said not so important. The second question was, where or on which parts of the bridges would you like to see the aesthetic upgrades, and select all that apply. So the first one that 67 people agreed with was the view from 400, and then another 67% preferred the view from Holcomb Bridge or the Express Lane Bridge as you are driving on the bridges. And then about 75% said the overall landscaping surrounding the bridges, which are the areas between the ramps and the mainline traffic. The third question was, which of the 3 bridges over Georgia 400 should have aesthetic upgrades? And again, this was another one of those select all that apply options. So 85% said the new interchange at Holcomb Bridge, 65% said to the Big Creek Parkway Bridge, and about 50% said to the GDOT Express Lane Bridge. And then 8% said none of the above 3 bridges. And the fourth and last question we asked was, Alpharetta's Encore Parkway Bridge included over $4 million in aesthetic upgrades. Should Roswell make a similar monetary investment in the look of each of our bridges? And 73% of the respondents said yes, and the 27% said no. So at the November 20th committee meeting, so we provided you with a lot of options and a lot of cost breakdown for all of these, and we had these 4 options presented at the committee for both bridges. The numbers here are a total of the 2 bridges that we were talking about. So again, option 1 is the do nothing option. If we don't do any bridge aesthetics, there is no cost to us. Option 2 was the the 2.7 million, which is the minimum that we could pay now to GDOT, and enable all of those pattern book aesthetic improvement look to these 2 bridges, and enable those looks for future upgrades. Option 3 was to pay the 2.7 million now, and then also an additional 10.3 million to implement all the options on both bridges if we desire to do so. Option 4 was to pay the $2.7 million now, and then if we don't pay for the actual upgrades at site now, the cost later after all the construction is completed after 2027, the cost is about $15 million to do all those upgrades to the 2 bridges to make them look like the pattern book from 2013. So here is a graphic from that pattern book from 2013. So this is basically the look that all these numbers relate to. So the guidance given to staff at the committee on November 20th was the option 2 that I mentioned before, with a little bit of the change where we added the up to word in there. So we said that pay up to 2.7 million now to GDOT to enable all or selected upgrades for future. So after the work session, we had more conversations with you, and we have received input from all of you. And based on that input, staff came up with 3 options. So 3 variations of the option 2, which is now option 2A, 2B, and 2C. and we hope to get a decision tonight since we owe it to GDOT. So we gotta identify the upgrades that we want and kind of pay either to implement them or at least to enable them for future. So I'll just explain the three options now that we're talking about. So option 2A, so this is the option that enables all upgrades for future with one variation. So, and that variation is the cost to get that pattern book look to the bridge fence. The cost for that is $1.8 million for the Holcomb Bridge and $1 million for the Express Lane Bridge. So the guidance given under this option was to cut that fence expense to half, still do it in the future, but cut that expense into half. So it doesn't really impact that 2.7 million number for now, but it saves the future cost. Not spend that much money on the fence, but cut the expense in half. And of course, look for other savings at the time of installation. Also, it was mentioned that branding is important. Of course, these are the three bridges in the city of Roswell. That unique look feature comes into play here. And also the economic development opportunities in the area in the future, they could play a role. There could be some opportunities for maybe public-private partnerships or some other ways to fund some of those future upgrades. So for this option that enables basically all upgrades for future, the cost to pay to GDOT now is $2.7 million, and the future cost would be up to $15 million. So we can enable them now, but the city may choose to do none of those upgrades later, so there will be no cost in the future, or the city may decide to do some. If the city decides to do them all, the cost could be around $15 million for both bridges for them to look like the pattern book aesthetics. Option 2B, that's the one that enables all aesthetic upgrades with the following variations. So this one suggests the upgrades, this suggests to build 2 upgrades as part of GDOT's project. So pay GDOT additional money to include these 2 upgrades. First one, install upgraded fence as part of GDOT's project. But again, the total cost for fence for both bridges was $2.8 million. This one suggests to cut that cost into half and give that money to GDOT for them to construct these fences as part of their project. And there's benefit in doing that because GDOT is going to put a very basic chain link fence, but if we tell them, hey, us as part of your project, put this upgraded fence, they'll only charge us the difference, which wouldn't be much. The chain link fence doesn't cost much, but there is still a difference. And in future, if we do the improvements later on, then there's a cost to take the old chain link fence out and then install the new one. So this option 2B suggests to pay money to GDOT now, about $1.4 million, and get it installed, get the upgraded fence installed as part of GDOT construction. The second option was the planters. This option proposes to pay to construct those planters as part of GDOT project, but then not install the fancy landscaping as was initially suggested. What this option suggests is to pay for mondo grass, which is the bare minimum green area you could have within those planters. So this is looking at the future lifelong maintenance cost of those fancy landscapings. So it's suggesting to pay for the planters now, but only put in the mondo grass, which has a very low maintenance cost in the future. So to put in the planters, the cost now, this is also going to be the additional cost for now, is $300,000 for the Holcomb Bridge, and then $150,000 for the Express Lane Bridge. Another topic that came up was, what if the city didn't do the planters at all? One suggestion that was made was to not do the planters and just do a concrete wall and have some brick texture on it. So that takes less space than a planter, so less cost, but then rather than doing any planting in it, you just do a brick look surface to the wall. We didn't have time to cost that one out, but I can tell it's going to be less expensive than the planters. So these are the two things this option proposes to add to GDOT's project and pay for them now. And the upgrades that are not included in this option is it suggests to not pay any money or not do any of the brick form liners on the walls or anything underneath the bridge beams. So driving on 400, if you look at the bridge, there's the top of the bridge above the beam, and then everything underneath the bridge, which is the bridge beams and the columns and all the walls on the side. So don't do any upgrades on those. And that, excluding those from both bridges, saves $300,000 at the Holcomb Bridge and $1.2 million at the Express Lane Bridge because it has those long walls for the ramps going up the Express Lane exits. The second element that it's suggesting to exclude is the landscaping, like I mentioned before. So the current saving, the initial cost is only $150,000 for both bridges, but it saves the lifelong maintenance for that fancy landscaping. So based on these two adds and these two deletes, the cost of this option now is $2.9 million. So that gets us it enables all upgrades for future, excluding the two things I mentioned, and constructs the fence and the planters with Mondo grass as part of GDOT's project. And again, the future cost for this option would still be $8 to $11 million at a later date to install remaining desired upgrades. So I have a couple of pictures actually. So when we talk about the brick form liner or the look of the walls and underneath the bridge, so the photo on the top left is the one we were trying to get to, the brick look. So this option 2B excludes that. And that means that the other 4 photos that you see here, these are like some of GDOT standard options that are available at basically no cost to the city. Some of you really like the picture in the middle on the top row. We are trying to work with GDOT to see if the city can pick and choose that one or something similar. So it will not be just plain concrete. It'll be some kind of a pattern. So nothing fancy, not like bricks, but something other than as shown in the 4 other pictures on this graphic. And then we are also, so remember I mentioned this option also excludes the brick look under the bridge, basically. So the beam and the columns that you see, we don't get any of these upgrades here. And that also goes into the next picture where this shows the beam and everything that's underneath the beam. So we're not including any of these upgrades. This option does not include any of those upgrades. Option 2C. So this one enables all upgrades with the following variations. So the planters on the bridge, the cost is $390,000 for the Holcomb Bridge and $240,000 for the Express Lane Bridge. And the suggestion under this option was to install these planters with the fancy landscaping as part of GDOT's project. So add this additional money to the GDOT payment now and get the planters and the landscaping built. This option also suggests to pay this extra $160,000 to GDOT to construct the trail on the approaches to the Express Lane Bridge. You all agreed that we need a 10-foot trail on the GDOT's bridge. We are paying some extra money for that. No matter which option you approve, you all agreed to that. So it would be wise to include this addition to GDOT's project as well. For $160,000, they'll build the 10-foot trail on the approaches to the bridge as well. That's coming from Grimes Bridge Road and Old Alabama Road from the other side. So this option also suggests keeps the basic GDOT chain link fence in the project for now, but then it prefers to have some kind of an upgraded fence later in the future. And this also suggests to not spend the full $2.8 million for both bridges just on fencing, but maybe cut the amount in half. So that is something that could be looked at later. This option also suggested to, if you're short of money, we could always look at the Big Creek Parkway. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have $2.5 million in the Big Creek Parkway aesthetics. And the plan is to match that with the pattern book as well. So we don't have a bunch of extra money there, and we're still looking at those numbers. There may be some flexibility, but not by a lot. So the upgrades that are not included under option 2. So again, this one says no break form liner on the sides or underneath the bridge, and we looked at the picture already. So nothing on the walls, nothing underneath the bridge, and this one actually excludes even the brick look from top of the bridge, as you see from 400, and I think I have a picture. So this one takes off the brick look even from the top of the bridge that you see on the sides, on the column and underneath the fence. So the cost for this option is $1.7 million now. And then again, in the future, depending upon what improvements do we want, the cost could be from $8 million to $30 million, $8 million to $13 million to build any of the desired elements. And this is actually just a graphic that shows the approaches to the express lane bridge. The blue part is where the 10-foot trail could get built if we pay GDOT that extra $160,000 now, so it could get built as part of their project. So this next slide is, so the same 3 options. This is like the Word format for the 3 options. I mean, of course, they're here for you to pick and choose whichever option you like. And then, so one thing that basically all of you consistently asked during our meetings was, do we have to pay the whatever amount you got, whatever option you choose, and whatever the minimum bill is due to GDOT now in the near future? The question was to ask GDOT if they would let us pay that amount in installments as against, as it was said in the MOU, to pay it upfront. So we've had conversations with the GDOT staff. At staff level, they were trying to work with their legal office at GDOT, didn't necessarily get an answer, but they said that if the now bill is like around $3 million, they'll probably be okay in letting us pay that over the next several years during construction. We can just add the amount to the other installments, the $15 million total bill. We can add the bridge aesthetic upgrade installments on top of that. So for that, the schedule is starting 2021. For the next 6 years till the completion of construction in 2027, we pay yearly installments for that $15 million, and whatever you guys decide tonight, that installment, smaller number, could be added on top of those yearly installments. So that's staff input I received this morning, and they feel confident that they can get the final approval on that from GDOT. As against the MOU. And we have an IGA coming up in the next 4 to 6 months, so that we can bring that up at that time. So staff's recommendation is to pick up one of the options tonight, or a variation of, the 3 options, so we could respond back to GDOT.
Councilmember Judy.
A little bit confused on 2A. Does the 2A include the path?
Path?
The path that you mentioned in
path.
2C?
No.
The 10-foot
No,
path?
the 2A and 2B, they only include the additional bridge structure and the path on the bridge. But the approaches, you know, the idea was maybe from it's only $160,000. When GDOT is done, our sidewalk program could build it. We could easily build that, but we could also add it to GDOT's project, so it could all get built at the same time. Either way is fine.
Okay, so my opinion on this, I know everybody's got an opinion on this, it's probably completely different, but I don't believe that not making the bridges look from 400 inviting to get off. Having driven this afternoon, I drove and looked at the bridges leading up to Roswell, and creating that look from the road that says, hey, look, you're in Roswell with the brick form liner, which matches, you know, a lot of our mill history and all those different type things, I think are where we put the brick sidewalks. I think it would say, hey, you're in Roswell, versus you're going to go around town and up in Sandy Springs. I noticed they've got that look there at 285. Again, they've got that plain look there as well. Then you're going to hit Encore, and you'll be like, wow. So for me, to enable that look from the road and upgrade from that, and then be able to, what we were just talking about earlier, look at the funding for these different type things and what's important on top of the bridge. We build the plumbing that allows us to do what we can do after that with option A. But I would like option A with the path, because I think the path is very important. So that's my feeling on this. But if we do nothing with the bridge underneath and we lose that opportunity in building, then I think that's a big loss. A, with the path, allows us to do everything else when we do have the money. And so we build the plumbing, and then once we decide as a group, I mean, if you look at the numbers from the public, it was pretty, you know, actually the top of the bridge was the third option picked, but not by much, but as third option picked. I think it's important this whole bridge looks well, and when you hit the bridges, the 3 bridges in Roswell now, you're gonna know you're in Roswell, not the same look as 285 Sandy Springs, and then you go through the same look, and then all of a sudden you hit Encore Parkway. So that's my opinion on this, and hopefully we can, I mean, we have to get to a decision tonight. So hopefully we can do that.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, I would agree that enabling all future improvements is basically essential. That's basically ground zero for where we need to start. As far as things that must be included now, how much of the exterior decorative bridge components, is there a little bit of leeway? I mean, we looked at the different sections, the form liner, the wall caps, the cheek walls, and the traffic barriers. I mean, specifically on the South Bridge, where there is an extended entrance, but can we, you know, focus on the bridge itself and not so much the walls that are actually on the street?
So are you talking about these areas
Yes.
in the picture?
Yes.
So these were particularly not very expensive, other than
Right.
the brick look on the walls on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other minor things, like putting a logo somewhere or putting the road name saying Holcomb Bridge or
Right.
Grimes Bridge or Old Alabama, whatever that road is going to be, that's not crazy expensive.
Right, but where the biggest expense was going to be with the walls.
So yeah,
on
that
the
brick
side.
form
There's the
liner
brick
for the
form
walls and
the
basically the look of the structure. The brick look of the structure and the walls is the big price tag item, and especially for the
Right.
express lane bridge.
Right.
And I have all the slides from the committee and the work session. If you want to see any of those details of any of the numbers, I have it.
You know, another consideration that I just want everybody to think about is the function of the 2 bridges and actually the 3 bridges. And I just wondered if you have any estimates on the number of cars that are going to be passing through on the Holcomb Bridge. And I guess my point is that is going to be a very high volume of traffic, and the goal is to get people across and onto and off the highway as quickly as possible, whereas I think on the south and the north bridge, it's going to be a little bit more of a locals only passing through pedestrian experience. So putting a little bit more emphasis on the actual streetscape on those bridges makes a lot of sense. Some of it's already budgeted for the north bridge, while just making sure that the Holcomb Bridge is welcoming and beautiful gateway to the city, but is also very functional.
Yes. So like the traffic numbers wise, I mean, we know the Holcomb Bridge carries about like 65,000 cars a day, both directions in this area. 400 itself has about 200,000 cars in a typical 24-hour period, both directions. So yeah, the area gets a lot of visibility.
Right.
Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been trying to think my way through options 2A and 2B. And both, by the way, with the trail connection for $186,000 in a project this big, we need to connect the trail and not waste time there. So for me, that on any option we pick, just do that. But if you'll go to question number 2 for a second on your slide, the public request. Let's see, is that the right one? Yeah, so getting a response from almost 1,000 people is a pretty big deal. I think that was way more than any of us probably would have expected. And what they're clearly telling us here is they want it all. And so as I look at 2A and 2B with the trail on both of them, I'm tempted to look at 2B, but then I look at what the citizens are telling us, and I want to enable everything so that as we go through the process over the next couple of years of figuring out what we're going to do, we've got the ability to do the things that right now our citizens are telling us that they want to do. So for me right now, I think where I'm at is 2A, including the trail approaches.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So, I definitely would love to be able to do it all. I definitely wish that was possible. And unfortunately, I think it just comes down to scarcity and sacrifices that need to be made. If I had unlimited money, then I'd love for the bottom of this bridge to be absolutely beautiful for everyone driving to Cumming to get to admire our bridge on their way home. But at the end of the day, the people I'm focused on are the people that are in Roswell. So it's not if they're driving on 400 going through Roswell on 400, but for me, it's the people that actually choose to get off. And whether they take a right or a left, whether they go east or west, I want them to have a beautiful, safe connection. Because really, I think it's just absolutely incredible that we're gonna have now 3 bridges connecting our east side and west side. That is absolutely a giant accomplishment. It's something I think we should all be very proud of. And I just want to make sure we're making that connection as easy, as safe, and as enjoyable as possible. And at the end of the day, if I choose to allocate funds towards underneath the bridge for those that are just driving through Roswell on 400, at the end of the day, that's money taken from somewhere else. That's money either taken away from better improvements that we can get sooner above the bridge, or we discussed earlier sidewalks. That's money that could be used towards sidewalks to fill in gaps throughout the city. So for me, what I really want to focus on is for these 3 bridges, ensuring that for the people that are crossing it, whether that's in a car, whether that's on a bicycle, whether that's walking, that it's safe. And that's done through having all three bridges have a multi-use trail, having a median. I think it makes sense. I think I like that you've came up with ways to make it so that whether it be a median as well as planters, that there's not the same high ongoing cost through what you've provided. So I think that's fantastic. But that's where I'd love to focus, because at the end of the day, just as we discussed with sidewalks and everything else, we don't have enough money, and I think we have to make some tough decisions.
Councilmember Judy.
So the insinuation that we're doing this for people going to Cumming is shocking, to say the least. I think that everybody wants a safe, beautiful road, but you also got to look at business development. We put some new rules on those four corners a couple years ago to attract business, and we want people to get off. We want people to feel welcome. We want people to feel a part of our brand. We want people to feel a part of our city, as well as the people that live there to have pride in their exits and where they're bringing their families home to for Christmas and other places. So this is not about that. This is about enabling the best thing for our citizens and those who might be citizens and those businesses that might call home here, because we need those businesses for our tax base so we can start doing sidewalks and start doing these things. So it's not for somebody driving to Cumming. This is for our citizens, and this is for business, and this is for, there's multiple ways about it. This is not a talking point of this is not for our citizens. That's a joke.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I was thinking about look at Avalon. I look at Avalon and I look at the bridge there, and I remember the hotel, I remember the Apple store. I don't remember the bridge. But I do remember three bridges. I mean, I've been in many bridges around the world and in different cities. And I remember Ponte Vecchio. I remember the Golden Gate in San Francisco. I even remember the bridge between Savannah and South Carolina. And I don't remember any bridge underneath. I never took a picture of a bridge from underneath. So spending money under the bridge is a waste of money. So just look, Avalon didn't need a beautiful multi-million-dollar bridge to develop Avalon in there. And when you drive to Avalon, you're not driving to the bridge, you are driving to the stores, very well selected in Avalon, or the restaurants, very unique restaurants. So again, this myth of driving under the bridge and say you are in Roswell, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I mean, I can't buy it. Like I said, all the bridges that I know, I admire them from the architecture on top, not the bottom. I never went under the Ponte Vecchio in Italy to see how it looks underneath. Oh, I'm in Italy, I'm in Florence. So again, I think that I don't believe that spending taxpayers' money when it's a scarce resource. I mean, if we have multi-million-dollar budget for whatever we want to do, I mean, just do it if someone wants to do it, but it's not the case. We have limited resources, and we have to maximize how we use them. So I do believe that, operational first for me, and aesthetical second for the top of the bridge. People won't come to Roswell. Oh, look, they have three beautiful bridges. Let's go and visit Roswell. I don't buy it. I mean, I don't know. I might be missing something, but I've been around the world, and I never went a city because of the bridge. So, I'm more in support of option 2B, and I agree with the slide with the connection, the extend the sidewalks. If you can show me the slide, which was the one after 2C, I believe. This one, yes. So I do support, because having this multi-use path on top of the bridge and then not having the connection to, that doesn't make sense. So I do support this one. I don't know if we can do it ourselves or we can give GDOT to do this for us, but I do support the connection from the bridge. So So that is my view on here, and I will support 2B.
Councilmember Tizer.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm not suggesting that we do or don't do the underside of the bridge. I'm suggesting that we keep that option open. We've got 1,000 citizens, and a clear majority of them like that. Now, once everybody finds out the cost and learns the differential and all those kinds of things, that survey might come back differently. But 1,000 people is a lot of people, and I just want to keep that option open. Doesn't really cost us very much to do that up front. So that's, again, I'm not sure that little picture in the middle of the form, that doesn't cost extra is a bad thing. But if we make this decision tonight to not enable the have it all version, I just think that can be problematic for us. So given the option, I'd like to keep it in, but I'm not sure I'd want to build it that way.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mohammed, I just wanted to clarify something that Councilmember Palermo said, and that is that all 3 bridges have safe multimodal transportation access, correct? The way that it's designed.
Vehicles, pedestrian, bicycles,
bikes, yes. So that's not what we're voting on or making decisions right now, correct?
This is
right.
purely,
this is purely aesthetics, right?
Aesthetic upgrades item.
Right. And we are also supporting, I think, in all 3 options, the improvements that give us the wider bridges to allow for those, correct?
All 3 options include that, the stronger structure and the wider bridges to hold multi-use trails. And the planters.
Sure, right, exactly.
And to hold the future heavier fence, street lighting, and all the future things that could be done.
Right, okay. I just wanted to clarify what is a given and what is not really a part of this discussion. What is something that we, is originally designed into the bridge design itself. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent, thank you. And that actually is helpful because I do want to make sure it's completely clear because when we met, I know there were the different options of doing that, not doing that. So whether 2A, 2B, or 2C is selected, all 3 bridges would have a multi-use trail on them?
Yes.
Excellent. And whether 2A, 2B, or 2C is selected, would all 3 have a median on them?
So if we do the upgrades, then yes. Unless you exclude as written, the option 2A, 2B, and 2C, yes, the median would be there.
So that's helpful.
Yes.
So that's.
But please keep in mind the express lane bridge is, the trail is only on the one side.
Right.
The other side has the ramps. So on that bridge, there is no median in the center. It's only on one side of it where there is no left turn lane.
Right.
But the planter we are talking about is between the trail and the vehicular lanes.
Yep, that makes sense. So that is very helpful clarification to make sure we're targeting our discussion. So I do appreciate that. What's actually interesting to me is, so when I had met with you and Mr. Del Ross, and you'd walk me through some of this. At that point in time, you didn't have pictures, or you didn't show me pictures of what the standard looked like for underneath. And what's interesting is actually it's nicer than I had expected, because what I had actually expected was, so no, I'm talking about, if you go to the slide that has actual pictures of examples, the concrete.
The walls?
Yep.
This one?
Right here.
Okay.
So you hadn't shown me this picture when we had met, and interestingly enough, or at least the ones on the right, actually, I do recognize the one on the left, but the ones on the right all look nicer than I had actually expected, because I was expecting just pure, straight concrete. So I think those actually, can look pretty nice. And what's interesting is Councilman Zapata bringing up Avalon being right there, right at the exchange, considered one of the most successful mixed-use properties around. And I pulled up a picture of the bridge, and the bridge it looks to me like it actually has chain link fence, which we're discussing having a higher quality one. It's like it looks like a curved chain link one, and then it's just pure concrete, and then just the pure green steel underneath it, and then just complete plain concrete pillars underneath. So it's actually, this is an interesting point of comparison that I think, even though we're disagreeing potentially on what the aesthetics underneath should be, no matter what, even the bare bones actually looks like it will be a more attractive aesthetics than what we're seeing right here at Old Milton Parkway. So I think that's relevant to bring up. And what's interesting is you had explained at committee or in a previous meeting, there are some opportunities for enhancements to the aesthetics later on without needing to build the bones here. Obviously, there's certain ones where it needs to be done while GDOT's doing it from the beginning, but there were aspects like paint and other aspects like that, that although I have concern with, that is something that at a later point in time, this council could decide to move forward with. And again, this is actually pretty similar to the discussion we had regarding the mid-year budget. My concern is I want to make sure that for this council and for the community, there's all those choices available. Because I do believe a lot of people would, of course, say, we want the, underneath, when you're driving under it to look great as well. But then at the same time, if it's choosing between that and filling in sidewalk gaps, that's where I think the majority of Roswell residents are going to choose the sidewalk gaps. Because again, I don't see underneath the bridge as a priority, just as I had never noticed what the bridge at Avalon had looked like underneath.
Well, let me just say, in my mind, we need to figure out what we want to do right now. We can design a bridge from now till kingdom come. But right now, what do we have the money to do? And I am supportive of putting everything into place so that future improvements can be made. That's not to say they will be made, but can be made, and we're not limiting what we can do. Yes, again, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So 2 clarifying questions. One is, so I understand there is a time crunch. We need to come to a decision tonight. And so I guess one of the questions is, so if we were to decide to do the very beautiful, very expensive brick wall underneath, I thought, what's that cost difference? Because I thought it was my understanding that if we decide tonight we want to go forward with having one of the more enhanced retaining walls, for example, I didn't think there'd be the chance to reverse that.
Sorry, I don't, so you're saying if we did so this top left picture that you see?
Yeah.
And all these brick-looking areas that you see here, these are some of the things that must be done as part of GDOT's project. These are brick looks, not necessarily bricks, so.
Right.
That's how the form lines.
So my question is, and my point is, if we were to vote moving forward, something that includes these things, that's not something we can decide later on to save the money on. We've told GDOT, move forward with this.
Yes.
Yeah, so therefore, there's certain things that are not just baseline setting us up, but they're actual decisions being made tonight.
Yes,
Yeah.
and gonna cost.
Exactly, and costing us money
initial
tonight.
payment to GDOT.
Exactly. So I think that's really important, and that's why because I actually agreed with Councilman Tiser's point that he made. I always want to leave flexibility, and he even said promoting the flexibility, not sure he'd want to go in that direction, but there's certain aspects and certain costs that we'd basically be voting on tonight to either go in that direction or not go in that direction. So I want to make sure that's clear. And so with it, so I understand where I stand, can you help me understand again, because Councilmember Wilsey was very helpful for me to understand that both 2B and 2C both include multi-use trails. One includes likely a full median, one a partial median, but so therefore those things are exactly the same. What are the differences between 2B and 2C? Can you remind me of those differences?
Yes. So looking at 2B, so it suggests to construct the fence for both bridges as part of GDOT's projects and pay them $1.4 million for that upgrade. It also says actually construct the planters, not just accommodate the planters for future, but actually construct them as part of GDOT's project. but not do the fancy landscaping, which has a much higher lifelong cost, but just do the grass, which is a lower maintenance item. And then the upgrades that are not included in the option 2B are, again, the no brick form liner on the sides, on the walls, or underneath the bridge. And that's a saving of $300,000 for the Holcomb Bridge, and then, $1.2 million for the Express Lane Bridge. And also, like I said before, no landscaping in the planters. And then going to the option 2C. Now this one actually constructs the planters with the fancy landscaping, and the costs are written there as part of GDOT's project. So we add the $390,000 and $240 in the initial bill, in the initial payment, and then the trail on the approaches, $160,000. And then it talks about the upgrade to the fence in the future, but not as part of GDOT's project. So that's not included. Install it later. So the project, when it's done with construction, it's going to have a standard chain link fence. And what's not included in this, like the other one, is the no brick form liner on the sides and underneath, and also on the upper part of the bridge, on the columns that hold the fence and underneath the fence. It excludes that as well. This is basically the view from 400. As you're driving on 400, you just see the patterned gray concrete, not the brick look on the sides and on the bridge itself, basically on the top and the beams and the bottom.
That's the same between 2B and 2C, right? I guess I'm still not fully seeing the complete difference.
The only difference is here in this picture. So 2C says no breaks at all, even on the columns on the top and underneath the fence and the columns underneath the bridge. The 2B says just do on the top, nothing underneath and on the sides, do the top of the bridge, which is the columns you see on the sides of the fence and underneath the fence. That's the difference.
Thank you.
Councilmember Zapata?
Thank you, Mayor. So, back to the planters. Planters, they will need a landscape, because planters without landscape is like, I don't know, why to have planters without landscape? Landscape costs money and costs money to maintain in the future, not only for us to build now, but for future generations to maintain. So, I see here the option of a brick, decorative brick or decorative half wall just to protect the pedestrian from the cars. That could be a decorative. Unfortunately, I guess we don't have examples to visualize how something like that will look instead of planters. But I think that this will definitely be almost zero maintenance cost for the future. At the same time, will protect pedestrian from crossing the bridge that we don't have today on Holcomb Bridge, and could be some sort of decorative half wall, whatever this decorative and material that could be used there. So, and this definitely is very low maintenance for the future, and could serve the purpose of pedestrian safety and biker safety, and at the same time could be some sort of decoration between the road, the cars and the pedestrian and bike sidewalk. So that is something that, I wish we have some visual examples to see how something like that will look, and take in consideration this possibility, because as usual, every time we build infrastructure, nobody really think much about maintenance costs. How much it's going to cost, how often do you have to maintain, and we know that not maintaining upgrades will be worse than having standard options. If you don't maintain, it looks worse, looks bad. So you have to have the commitment and the resources, financial resources, to maintain for life. So we have to keep also this in mind when we take these kind of decisions.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a question in each of the options, and this is just to clarify for everyone and for those listening. With the cost that we pay now, what are we committing in the future? Can we spend, like for instance with option B, can we spend the 2.9 million now, get all the things that are there, and have a bridge that we can be happy, bridges that we can be happy with? Or are we, with this option, committing the city to the 8 to 11 million?
No, we are not committing
We're not
to
committing.
anything in the
Okay,
future.
right.
Like I said, if
Right,
the
right.
city decides to do no upgrades in the future, the cost is zero.
Right. I mean, I guess that's my greatest concern. I mean, we've got $80 million worth of sidewalks and trails to build. We have a fire department that needs $40 million. We have a police department that needs a 911 center. You know, I could just go on and on and on with needs. And I just am reluctant to commit the city to money that we don't have without having some funding source identified to bring it in. So I guess I would like for us to come up with an option now that we can be happy with, and will still give Roswell a very distinctive look and entrance gateway to the city. Just something to think about.
I'd like to make a suggestion. I would like to just basically poll council on if you are leaning toward any one of these three options or a hybrid of those. And keeping in mind, we're only committing funding now. We're not committing future funding, but will be opportunities in the future to upgrade those bridges if we do these things. So I would like to just kind of cut to the chase here, because we don't need to design these bridges tonight. What we do need to do is build the infrastructure to support what could be done in the future. And frankly, I think with that stamped concrete that you had showed us, because that was one of my questions. I had just driven up 400 and going through Sandy Springs, and actually it looks nice what they're doing along there with the stamped concrete. So so let me just poll council and just see where you're leaning, and hopefully we won't have to design a bridge tonight. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a quick question. How much money do we have available right now in terms of funds?
So in the T-Splost funds, we had allocated $2 million total for both bridges. And then, like I mentioned before, we have $2.5 million for the Big Creek Parkway Bridge. There is not a lot of flexibility there, but you could take some if you wanted. But please remember, we are paying this. Hopefully, we are paying this 2.7 or 2.9 or whatever number you guys agree on over the next several years in installments. So there may be other opportunities later.
So right now, we don't have 2.9
We don't in this project, no.
to start with, okay. So, and then, quick question, how much will be to add to finish beside the bridge, the sidewalks?
$160,000.
116?
160.
160, okay.
Are you finished, Councilmember Zapata?
Thank you, yes.
Do you want me to start?
If you would go through the three options again, just the overview of the three options.
Yes. We had this slide at the end. This is the word form of the three options. So the option A is to submit option 2A to GDOT for inclusion in the express lane project to accommodate future plans for bridge enhancements by the city. Option 2A constructs all items that are required to be in GDOT's project and enables all future improvements identified in the public space design standards for the future consideration by the city. And if I heard correctly, the $160,000 for the trail on the approaches, there was a suggestion made to add that to all options. So that's not included here, but we can add. That's the only thing missing here in the write-up.
Okay, can you go on to?
Yes, option 2B, to submit option 2B to GDOT for inclusion in the Express Lanes Bridge project to accommodate future plans for bridge enhancements by the city. Option 2B eliminates all brick form liner work from walls and underneath bridges at an estimated cost of $1.5 million. Option B proposes to use the savings to construct a decorative fence with brick hardscape features on top of both bridges within GDOT's Express Lane project. Option 2B also proposes a variation of the planter barrier on both bridges as shown in the public space design standards. That's where we were talking about constructing the planters, but not doing the fancy landscaping, just do the grass. And then again, if the 160 could be added here, if you all agree. Option 2C eliminates all brick form liner work from walls and underneath bridges at an estimated cost of $1.5 million. Option 2C includes installation of trail on approaches of Express Lane Bridge and the planter barrier with landscaping on both bridges as shown in the public space design standards. So the 160 trail is already included in this one.
Thank you. Does council have any additional questions, clarification on these? Is there anyone in the public that, yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Janet Russell, this is the reason I came. Of course, it's the second to the last item. Thank you, Mohammed, for a very comprehensive, and hopefully people can understand what you're talking about. So here's my thoughts on this bridge. I've been talking about it for a while. First of all, in 50 years, is somebody going to be standing up here saying, 50 years ago you talked about a bridge and you didn't do jack? It won't be me, I'll be long dead. Secondly, it is the, as Mr. Judy pointed out, if he was looking up at me for a minute, would be nice. It is the entrance to our city. However, I think from a tourism standpoint and an economic development standpoint, you don't need to have the underside of the bridge prettier than the top of the bridge. As people are approaching, you see the top of the bridge. I too have been on most major bridges in the world, from Zimbabwe to San Francisco, to the bridge at the Opera House in Sydney. So here's what I'm thinking, and you all need to stop thinking inside your boxes for a minute. You're doing a good job asking lots of questions. You give a lot of money to the Roswell Arts Fund every year for art, to put all that sculpture all over town. You also approved or discussed recently at a work session about mural art in Roswell that you're going to find money to fund. So why don't you use mural art under the bridge so that if people are actually stopped, they can look at something and it can tell the story of Roswell. You have 3 bridges, tell 3 stories. We have colonial, we have Cherokee, and we have African American. Use those opportunities to teach people about what makes Roswell different. Now, the top of the bridge needs to be beautiful for the people that are walking there. I know you don't think people walk. Well, you can't walk where there's no place to walk. You do not need planters. They become ashtrays and garbage dumps. Look at the median on Holcomb Bridge Road. It's full of ashes, always cigarettes. It's just ugly. And Roswell doesn't have the best record of keeping our planters up. Just look at our roundabouts. They're really ugly. They look like Chernobyl. So what I would suggest is you take a walk on the North Avenue Bridge from the MARTA station over to the Bobby Dodd Stadium. I've done it frequently. Or you walk from the High Museum to the Buckhead Station on Peachtree, and you cross over that bridge. I've done it. It's a long walk. Be prepared. They have done beautiful artwork. For example, the word Peachtree, where it says Peachtree because you're crossing over Peachtree Street when you're on 7585 connector, is actually a collage of pictures of what makes Atlanta beautiful, the city of, spelling the word Peachtree. So you see Peachtree from the freeway, but you, as walk, see pictures of Atlanta as part of the word Peachtree. We need to get creative here. These people are engineers. Their job is to do construction. We need to collaborate and have interdepartmental communication and spending of money. You can't just spend it one way and then wonder why we have nothing anyplace else. Take advantage of your art and use it there. Want to be different? Do it differently. Don't look like everybody else. I don't want to hear, maybe from heaven if I'm dead in 50 years, you know, there was an old lady who got up 50 years ago and talked about the bridge and they're still talking about it. Because I'm going to tell you what I tell clients when they say, oh, this vacation is so expensive. You're spending the cheapest money you will ever have in your life right now. Next year, this will cost more in actual dollars because of inflation, because of lost interest. You're not going to find the money. You haven't found it for anything. As a reminder, about 9 years ago, the city took $500,000 out of a MARTA gift, $1,645,000, to spend on pedestrian access across the Holcomb Bridge, which they never used at all, and no one has ever told me where that $500K went. But last year, you approved another $500K for pedestrian access across the same bridge. Now, it's totally unsafe. There is no pedestrian lighting where people walk. There is no grade differential. It is on the same level with cars. And I saw a man walking the other night in the dark on Holcomb Bridge. He had to have a death wish. It's that unsafe. So you cannot exclude aesthetics from safety. You cannot exclude lighting. And I would suggest that you get a little bit creative and stop thinking in the box, because in 50 years, nobody's going to be happy if we don't have a bridge, just like we don't have sidewalks right now.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak? Okay, what is the pleasure of this council? Would you like to give an indication on what you can support and what you can't, so we can try to figure out if we've got any kind of consensus here? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. And I do want to just point out a couple great points there. I think it would be interesting to think about and look, and we can do this, of course, at a later time and not contingent on tonight in our direction of GDOT, but just looking for opportunities through art, whether mural or sculpture, et cetera. So I think that's interesting to think about. And also the planters, similar to the point of aesthetics and safety, are aligned. Planters, an advantage of that is increased safety, so that's consideration. So going to the mayor's request for indication. So for me, just given the fact that 2C is the lowest cost and does achieve really all these safety aspects, 2C is the one that I lean towards. I think 2B has some potential advantages, but 2C is probably the one that I'd be most focused on.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Councilmember Judy.
So I love people act like I've never been on a bridge before. I was actually on the Tower Bridge and the London Bridge about a week ago. So I've been on bridges around the world as well. But what I'm trying to say is I disagree with us turning down the form liner tonight. This project could go out to 2024, 25, 26. You never know when this is going to get done. We axe that tonight. We are actually going against what the survey said. And I think it's a big mistake to throw out the possible branding of our 3 bridges this evening for all different kinds of reasons, including business development and really branding the city. So at the very least, if we have to go that direction, I could do 2B. But I think we are making a big mistake here if we go away from 2A and throw that out tonight, because in 6 years when this actually starts happening, I'm pretty sure if we didn't want it, we could go back and say, hey, do this. But if we do it tonight, we throw that out, we'll never have the chance to make those bridges look unique again.
Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Mayor. So I prefer option A, 2A, including the trail connections. However, I'm not opposed to option 2B, including the trail connections, provided that the form, the stamped form concrete, is that one that's up in the right-hand middle. Yes, sir.
The one I can show. But yeah, that's the one where we have been trying to get an answer from GDOT.
So,
yeah, that's the one in the top row in the middle.
yeah. So I would prefer A, so we don't give up options that we might want to come back to. Always including the 160, to me, that's silly not to do at this point. But if you could guarantee that it looked like that middle one, I would not be opposed to it.
So I cannot guarantee that today. We tried to get that answer from GDOT, and we don't have an answer yet. It depends, I guess, whatever form liner they'd be using when they do the construction. We can try and work with GDOT as much as we can.
Is there a possibility that it's the same form liner
Exact same?
as the brick?
Yes, it
version?
is possibility, yes. We
So-
can make a request to GDOT, and it could be that one.
Yeah, so option 2A could actually turn into option 2B.
Yes,
future.
but the option 2A, remember, is the brick look on the top left.
Right.
So if we don't do that, we save 300,000 plus 1.2 million and get one of the other standard. And this, GDOT may have new standards next year in 2 years, but we'll do our best to work with GDOT. And they've been good to work with. They'll do the best they can. But I cannot guarantee one specific one tonight, just only because we didn't hear back from GDOT.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. For me, tonight, I can support option 2B with the trails connections.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, I also, in a perfect world, I think 2A would be ideal. I think that option 2B gets us to a very attractive bridge and a lot of the elements that I think we all in the public feels are most important, the decorative railing, and it also gives a nice attractive exterior and an opportunity for branding on the side. I would support in that option the hardscape median rather than the planter because of the maintenance that's required ongoing. And I also would support any and every opportunity to incorporate art creatively in where we can. So, thank you.
Okay, it's looking to me like, although 2B is not the first choice for everyone, everyone does seem to recognize 2B. It looks to me like we would like to make sure the trail connections for 160. And then we've got a couple of other just little nuances, a hardscape median as opposed to planters.
Can I please ask for a clarification on that? So when we say a hardscape median, are we thinking a wide median in place of, as the same width of the planter, or are we talking basically a decorative wall? Because if it's a decorative wall, it still provides that safety benefit, but saves a bunch of money.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yeah, I guess I would just want to look at those options, a little more. I think a to know exactly what I think a decorative wall would be fine. I think doing the brick look would actually be nice.
Yes.
The brick look that matches the side walls of the upper part of the bridge.
Yes.
Whatever that needs to be.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So, yeah, definitely sounds like 2B could be an opportunity for moving forward. With the planter aspect compared to the decorative wall, so I think a decorative wall to me sounds great. The way you had described it to me before was just those concrete dividers that you maybe that get something else added to them to make them look a little better, but I was still just concerned. I don't want it to look like a construction site, something that doesn't create a good opportunity on top of the bridges, because again, I think that is an absolute priority. So that's my only hesitation there.
So we're talking only a couple 3 feet tall wall and with brick form on the top.
So it doesn't look like those construction concrete dividers in the on the highways and in urban construction zones? Oh, so that's cheaper than a planter? Oh, fantastic. Oh, wow.
A whole bunch of money went into the added width for the planter, which has to be a few feet wide for the landscaping. So this is reduced width. So this saves money as well, still provides the same benefit. It's just not green.
Thank you.
Councilmember Judy.
Like to make a motion.
I'll accept a motion.
Motion for 2B with the trail connectivity, $160,000 trail connectivity, and the brick wall option.
We've got a motion by Councilmember Judy. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Last. Hello? There we go. All right, last on the agenda this evening from Transportation, number 11, approval of a mayor and/or city administrator sign a contract with Michael Baker International for the design of a pedestrian hybrid beacon, PHB, along SR 9 in amount not to exceed $53,080.50. Mr. Ralph.
Thank you, Councilmember Judy. So this is the design contract for Hawk, which is going to be located on Highway 9 between Norcross Street and Magnolia Street. At the committee meeting, I mentioned to you that since the manufacturing and delivering of the mast arm poles takes a very long time, about 6 months, we were suggesting to do a span wire, that's a wire hanging around the whole span, in the short term, and do a mast arm pole installation later. But luckily, in our backyard at Hemry, a few years ago, we ordered mast arms for the school, the Vickery Mills Elementary School. Same width of road, 4 lanes plus a turn lane. We found and looked at those mast arm poles. They are the exact size we need here. And the reason we ordered them for the school was it was on the order for that 6-month-long delivery time, and during that time, GDOT approved the post-mounted school zone for the school. That's why we had that in our stock. So it'll just be one install. It'll be quick, hopefully in the next few months, and we'll do the mast arm pole installation if you approve the design tonight for $53,080.50, and these are just a couple of graphics of the location, and that's the look of the mast arm for this Hawk, and we have the funding available.
Does council have any questions? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the Hawk signal.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Judy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tizer. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Davidson.
Mayor, I have a recommendation for closure on the council agenda. However, I'd like to withdraw that. I would need everybody there.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. We are adjourned.